The House of Representatives will now come to order. Leading us in our prayer this afternoon is Pastor Jeff Lathrop of the Fort Pierre Ministerial Association, followed by our Pledge of Allegiance, led by Derek Thompson of Rapid City and Ben Wangsness of Miller. Please rise.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Friends, let us center ourselves for a word of prayer. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, we pause on this day to remember who we are and whose we are. In a world that often feels unsteady, you remain our steady, solid ground. In times of confusion and urgency, you remain our wisdom. Today, we are mindful of conflict around the world, of lives lost, and of service members deployed far from home, and of families who wait and pray anxiously with open hearts. We remember the cost of war not in abstractions, but in sons and daughters, spouses and parents, friends and neighbors. Hold them all in your mercy, your tender care and love, and guard and protect all who serve. Comfort those who grieve and steady those who lead. As unrest stirs abroad and uncertainty lingers, we confess our collective need to rely upon you in your goodness and your guidance. Here in South Dakota, many shoulder the responsibility and burdens of rising costs, thinking of their families, their businesses, thinking of our schools, those teachers and administrators, for public safety and the well-being of those in rural communities and even in our tribal communities. Lord, beneath each policy and each debate are real people, real fears and real hopes. Grant to the members of this body clear minds and courageous hearts. Give them patience and discernment, integrity in decision-making, and humility in leadership. Help them seek not only what is expedient, but what is right and what is good. Not only what is popular, but what serves the common good for all the people. Bless the staff who labor behind the scenes, those who do the research, those who assist in many ways, those clerks, our pages, the security personnel, all who sustain this important work out of public view. Strengthen their families. Strengthen all who share in the sacrifice of those long hours and public responsibilities. And today, in moments of deep discussion, make this chamber a place where conviction is tempered by compassion and strength is guided by wisdom. And may the work done on this day become a source of stability and hope for all the people. Grant them and this body and their leadership your peace and your steadiness of heart and mind and spirit. For we ask it all in Jesus' name. And all God's children said, Amen. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will please call the roll.
Representatives Andera, Arlen, Auk, Elward, Baumüller, Bathke, Baxter, Sismowski, DeGroot, Derby, Duffy, Emery, Fitzgerald, Fosness, Garcia, Goodwin, Gosh, Greenfield, Halverson, Healy, Heerman, Heineman, Hughes, Hunt, Ismay, Jameson, Jensen, Jordan, Jorgensen, Casson, Kaiser, Colbeck, Call, Ladner, Lems, Manhart, Massey, May, Moore, Mortensen, Muckey, Mullally, Mulder, Knowles, Norstrup, Odenbach, Overwig, Peterson, Poyer, Randolph, Rayfelt, Reimer, Reich, Rice, Roby, Rowe, Schaefbauer, Schwanz, Shorma, Schuback, Sharda, Soy, Stevens, Uri Bulk, Van Diepen, Wahlberg, Weems, Weisgram, Whitman, Speaker Hansen.
Here.
Mr. Speaker, there is a quorum.
Thank you. Representative Jameson.
Okay, now we'd like to read the House Page Resolution. A resolution expressing the appreciation and gratitude of the House of Representatives of the 101st Legislature of the State of South Dakota to the pages for this term. Whereas these pages have served loyally for the House of Representatives of the 101st Legislative Session, and whereas the members of the 101st House of Representatives express their most sincere appreciation to these young people for their service to the state, and whereas the members extend to these young people their wishes for every success in life. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 101st Legislature of the State of South Dakota that a personal copy of this resolution be duly certified and furnished to each page on this last day of service. Adopted by the House of Representatives March 5th, 2026, John Hanson, Speaker of the House, and Patricia Miller, Chief Clerk of the House. Now, if we've got everybody lined up, I'll see if I can get these names right. Ava Davis. Marcy Duffy. Ethan Estabrook. Danica Ulysses. Cooper Falkenhagen. That's fun to say. Jenica Koistany. Raquel Menzel. Connor Newsom. Isla Larodi. Lily Shortland. Veronica Thomas. Derek Thompson. Last but not least, Ben Wagnus. Please join me in thanking these pages. No, your job, no.
Approval of the journal.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Legislative Procedure respectfully reports that the Chief Clerk of the House has had under consideration the House Journal of the 32nd day. All errors, typographical or otherwise, are duly marked in the temporary journal for correction. And we hereby move the adoption of the report. Respectfully submitted, John Hanson, Chair.
That motion having been made and seconded, are there any remarks? Seeing none, all those in favor of approval of the journal will signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Reports of standing committees.
Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Legislative Procedure respectfully reports that the Office of Engrossing and Enrolling has carefully compared House Bill 1017, 1048, 1089, 1102, 1180, 1194, 1238, 1244, 1262, 1263, 1292, and 1311, and finds the same correctly enrolled. Respectfully submitted, John Hanson, Chair. Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Legislative Procedure respectfully reports that House Bill 1027, 1049, 1092, 1099, 1107, 1126, 1164, 1188, 1193, 1234, and 1264 were delivered to His Excellency the Governor for his approval at 9:37 a.m. March 5th, 2026. Respectfully submitted, John Hanson, Chair. Mr. Speaker, the House Committee on Appropriations reports that Senate Bill 106, 119, and 121 were amended and do pass. Senate Bill 102, 120, and 222 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Mike Derby, Chair. Mr. Speaker, the Committee on House Transportation reports that Senate Bill 219 do pass. Respectfully submitted, Tony Randolph, Chair.
Messages from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to inform your honorable body that the Senate has adopted the report of the Conference Committee on Senate Bill 3. Also, Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to inform your honorable body that the Senate has concurred in House amendments to Senate Bill 36 and Senate Bill 164. Also, Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to return herewith House Bill 1017, 1048, 1089, 1180, 1238, 1244, 1262, 1263, 1292, and 1311, which have passed the Senate without change. Also, Mr. Speaker, I have the honor to return herewith House Bill 1200 and 1209, which have been amended by the Senate, and your concurrence in the amendments is respectfully requested. Respectfully, Peggy Lorenz, Secretary.
Consideration of committee reports.
Representative Odenbach moved that the reports of the standing committees on appropriations on Senate Bill 74, as found on page 497 of the House Journal, also Commerce and Energy on Senate Bill 221, as found on page 499 of the House Journal, also State Affairs on Senate Bill 245, as found on page 497 of the House Journal, be adopted.
That motion having been made and seconded, are there any remarks? Seeing none, all those in favor of the Odenbach motion signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Second reading of consent calendar items.
Senate Bill 107, add licensed and registered child care programs to the definition of community safety zone. Senate Bill 137, establish procedures for anti-SLAPP actions to protect the exercise of a person's constitutional rights, including freedom of speech. Senate Bill 139, revise a provision related to the transportation of an inmate upon discharge from a correctional facility.
Consent calendar items having had their second reading are up for consideration and final passage. Consent calendar items are bills and resolutions that have been reported out of committee with no negative votes and certified as uncontested. If any member objects to the placement or retention of any item on the consent calendar, the item must be removed from the consent calendar and placed on the House calendar for debate. Items on the consent calendar are not debatable, but questions may be asked. Are there any questions? Any questions? Seeing none, then the question before the House is final passage of the items on the consent calendar. All those in favor will vote yea, those opposed nay. The clerk will unlock the voting machine and the members will proceed to vote. Representative Peterson. Granted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, members of the body, it's a fun day for me to have my family out here. Before I forget, I want to introduce first my parents-in-law, David and Jolene Iacker, as well as my wife, Lauren. And then this is Michael. He's 3 in a month, and Catherine 7 months. And it's just so fun to have our families here, and I've waited all year to have them out here. And in these difficult weeks where it's really hard to find consensus on things and work together, I think we all know what we're doing this job for, and these are 3 of the reasons I'm doing this. So could you please help me welcome to the Capitol? Thank you.
Representative Baxter, Representative Fitzgerald, Representative Garcia, Representative Massey, Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
The clerk will please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were ayes 65, nays 2, excused 3.
Consent calendar items, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members-elect, are hereby declared passed. Any questions on the title? Seeing none, the titles are deemed correct.
Second reading of Senate bills.
Senate Bill 135, an act to protect residents from increased utility costs and utility shortages caused by data centers and clarify authority to regulate data centers.
Senate Bill 135, having had its second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Are there any remarks? Representative Hansen.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker and members of the House. It's an honor today to present to this House of Representatives Senate Bill 135, which has been called the Data Center Bill of Rights for Citizens. And really, this piece of legislation is responsive to a number of concerns that I'm sure we've all heard from people across the state and across the country who have seen some of the headlines that have come out of Virginia and other places where, in some places, these data centers, hyperscale data centers in particular is what we're talking about, have been constructed and they've seen upwards of 200+% increases in electricity bills. And so the thought behind this bill is a bit of a consumer protection measure just to make sure that our South Dakota citizens, those who live and work here today, aren't forced to subsidize hyperscale data centers through excessive utility rates. So that's Section 3 of this bill. It's essentially modeled after what we would call cost causer pays. And so if you're causing the increase in cost to that electric provider, then you're going to be on the hook for that cost. And I think that's just a fair way that we can deal with these new massive hyperscale data centers that we're seeing come across the country and maybe to South Dakota. Section 4 of the bill then provides just some assurance that people in local government will have say over their local jurisdictions when it comes to these data centers. And finally, Section 5 and Section 6 really deal with protecting water resources. We've talked a lot about water on the floor of this House and how obviously necessary and precious that it is. And so we just want to make sure that if a hyperscale data center is going to come into one of our communities, that our local water resources are protected for the citizens who are living there today. So I would certainly appreciate your green vote on Senate Bill 135. Thank you very much.
Are there any further remarks on Senate Bill 135? Representative Mortensen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill. And what the prime sponsor just said it did, it does. I mean, we already have a cost causer pays model in this state, and the PUC's operated under that for a long time and done it well. The locals already have some input. We already have folks making sure our water's taken care of. There's some decent stuff in this bill, too. This is not, there's some stuff I'm not wild about, but what I don't like about this is what this says about our state and our legislature and our future. We've reckoned with this, and it's a big topic this year. And I just have to say that if this is the product coming out of this body, I cannot support it, because it is fundamentally governing from a place of fear and not from a place of optimism and not from a place of opportunity. What are we fearing? It's a valid fear. It's one many of us feel. It's why we ran. We want to protect the communities we came from. We want them to resemble the communities we grew up in. We want to raise our kids in the same town we grew up in and in the same feel, in the same neighborhood, right? That's what we yearn for. It's a healthy and a good yearning. The prime sponsor over here isn't coming to this maliciously. That protectionism comes from a good place, and I think a lot of us feel it. Protect what we've got. Love and respect for our past is a good thing, but this protectionism is a false god. It is a false god. Because if you put barriers to growth and barriers to opportunity, and you don't let anyone build anything, that doesn't preserve our communities. That kills them. That kills them. If you don't let people grow and do new things, we know what comes. First you lose the grocery store, then you lose the nursing home, then you close the school. Now all you've got is a gas station. It is a cruel irony of protectionism that you try to put we start focusing on what government can block and not what people can build. We know where that leads. That does not protect in the long run. That stifles in the long run. Now let's talk just specifically on data centers on this thing. Folks, we got to get in the game. We have to get in the game. This is not the kind of issue where we can bury our heads in the sand and protect our backsides. They are going to build these things 3 or 4 miles outside of our border, all around us. Every one of the concerns in this bill will still be there if they're 4 miles out. Our energy grid does not know state boundaries. Our water does not know state boundaries. Everything you might be concerned about, every bad outcome, would come to fruition if it's 4 miles out. Only who gets nothing? We get nothing. Our people get nothing. We don't get these jobs in rural areas. We don't get a broader tax base that would allow us to keep taxes low or to provide for schools or nursing homes. We need to change our tack here, folks. We got to get back to opportunity. This comes from a good place, but focusing on what government can block is the wrong path. We need to start focusing on what people can build. This bill's got some decent stuff in it. It's not the end of the world. But I challenge this body in this state to get back on our front foot and get back to being a place of opportunity. Thank you.
Further remarks, Representative Gosh.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Question for the previous speaker.
Ask your question.
Where in the bill does this stop data centers?
Representative Mortensen.
You bet. As I went through, the prime laid out the three main goals, which is cost, cause, or pays, which we already have at the PUC level, that local governments would have input, which they already do, and that the water resource be protected, which is there. And to answer the question more specifically, I didn't get up and say this just bans these things. I said that this is coming at it from a regulation-first perspective and not an opportunity-first perspective. That's my problem with it.
Representative Gosh.
Comments, Madam Speaker. I think it's clear the previous speaker said a lot of these things are already in our rules and our statutes to protect these individuals. We're just trying to get ahead of it. And we're not saying you can't put data centers up. We're just saying don't raise the rates of the people that live there and don't go after what they do on a private day-to-day basis. I completely disagree with the previous speaker on what this bill does and does not do. It is not a way to get in the way of economic development, but rather put safeguards in place to ensure the people that live there, people like me in rural South Dakota, don't have to go up against large corporations, have our rates increased so that they can move in. I would respectfully ask everybody to vote green. Thank you.
Are there any further remarks on Senate Bill 135? Representative Jorgensen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too rise in support of this. I think that there's some definitely misinformation. This is just a Bill of Rights for the people. It's just to put some guardrails in. I mean, Florida's doing this. Other states are looking at doing the same thing. We want to avoid the grid strain. We want to make sure that we don't have higher utility bills or water shortages, and we want to make sure that there's reasonable community impacts. I don't see anywhere in this bill where it says you can't have data centers, but we're just taking a common sense approach. And I think that there is an overreaction saying this is something it isn't. So I encourage a green vote on this. Thank you.
Any further remarks on Senate Bill 135? Representative Moore.
Yeah, I'm going to oppose this bill for several reasons. We're already doing it. I work for a utility. Trust your neighbors, trust your friends. We're on the city council. and on the cooperative boards in your PUC. We already put in place, we've been dealing with this for 10 years. Why don't we have a lot of data centers? Because the utilities have been slow to accept reducing rates and allowing these big centers to come in. They got to bring their own generation after so many megawatts. And in South Dakota, where basin's involved, you can only bring in, like the whole East Riverside, you can only bring in like 25 megawatts of crypto and 25 megawatts of data. We're handling it. So I don't know why we got to put all these new rules in place for the legislator to control your local utilities. I'd ask for a no vote.
Any further remarks on Senate Bill 135?
Madam Speaker.
Representative Odenbach.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, I think this is probably one of those 80-20 issues. If you go out and poll people in South Dakota, do they want us to get this right on data centers before we jump into this issue? And when you talk about like Section 3 of this bill that says there's going to be separate terms and conditions for electric service to a data center, you take a look at what other states have done, you can learn a lot from some of the lessons of people who've gone down this path before us, establishing things like large load customers and things like that that they have that we can do here to do better in our law than we do now. I heard it called protectionism, but this is the kind of protections I want to have on the front end before we get into this. And there's people, if you read about, there's some utilities out in New Jersey that serve multiple states, and they're looking at rolling blackouts at certain times of the year and certain peak load times because they got out ahead of their skis and they didn't have these protections in place. This is actually a very reasonable, not going too far bill. You have to give some increased notice provisions here to your local water people. Why wouldn't we want to do that? So you can learn a lot from looking at the other states that went before us, and this is the smart way for us to proceed. We may have data centers, and this bill doesn't say we're not, but we'd better have the right scheme in place before we do it. Please vote green.
Any further remarks on Senate Bill 135? Representative Reich.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, this bill is unnecessary. They're not coming, folks. They're not coming. They're building 50 of these a year. 50 new data centers a year right now. 42 other states have welcomed them. They're not coming, folks. The bill is unnecessary. Vote no.
Any further remarks? Senate Bill 135. Representative Mullally.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I believe that the core principle of government is to protect the rights of the citizens. And I don't believe that government should not force private citizens to subsidize concentrated industrial consumption. And given the narrowing amendment that limits the bill to large-scale facilities, the structural balance that Senate Bill 135G, which is what we're speaking on, favors the protection of household property and decentralizes authority over unchecked industrial expansions. So I rise in support of this bill to protect the rights of the citizens, which to me is the proper role of government.
Any further remarks on Senate Bill 135? Any further remarks? Representative Shorma.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wasn't going to stand up and talk to this, but you know, the good representative from over there in Brown, Campbell, and Edmonds said, we have to be good neighbors. I don't believe utilities are going to ignore when someone is coming in with a big load demand. They have the ability to put controls in place. I don't believe the counties are going to ignore a data center that's looking to come to their county and say, you can do whatever you want with water. I mean, I understand the new data center design is an enclosed environment that doesn't use a lot of water, but that's neither here nor there. If we believe that our elected officials have the ability to make decisions to protect us as a good neighbor, Why are we putting this new layer on? And what will come next year? Another layer and another layer after that? We've got protection already in place. Please vote no. Thank you.
Any further remarks on Senate Bill 135? Further remarks? Seeing none, Representative Hansen.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to the House for this conversation. You know, it's been said that these aren't necessary and that the co-ops are already engaging in these protections. And I think in many ways, the co-ops, a lot of them that I've talked to, are doing a great job looking out for their members. But I don't think that's the case maybe for everybody, or it might not be the case for all time. And so this simply puts these simple provisions in place to make sure the cost, cause, or pays, which was said, you know, the PUC can do. I'm not sure that they do in every case. I think it's a case-by-case basis. But this would just make sure for these particular hyperscale data centers, which is a game changer. I mean, speaking of the co-ops, you know, in talking with the co-ops, I think what they told me is from the entire river all the way to the eastern side of the state and maybe even a little into Minnesota, at their highest peak usage of electricity from the day they put on the first light bulb to today, the most demand they ever received at one point was, I think, 864 megawatts. 864 megawatts. One of these hyperscale data centers can take more electricity than that. That's a game changer. And so we're not saying no to that, as was said earlier. We're not saying no to that. But we're putting some basic protections in place for consumers, for South Dakota ratepayers. They've seen the headlines. They've seen the concerns. They know what's going on in other places where people's electricity bills are skyrocketing 200+%. I don't think that's fair. I don't think that's how we want to treat our South Dakotans. And, you know, just 2 days ago, there was a news story on Kello about, you know, now they're launching a new website for this data center in Sioux Falls. So I don't think it's right to say that they're not coming either. I think they could be coming. And if so, we're not saying no to that in this bill. We're just providing South Dakotans who have lived here and worked here and raised a family some assurance so that they know they won't be forced to subsidize this through higher utility bills and through a loss of water resource at the local level. I think it's a really good basic consumer protection measure for the people of this state, and I would be grateful for your green vote. Thank you.
Seeing no further remarks, the question before the House is final passage of Senate Bill 135. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed will vote nay. The clerk will unlock the voting machine and the members will proceed to vote.
Representative Poirier.
Representative Mucky,
Personal privilege, please.
go ahead.
Thank you. So I want to welcome the folks here in the back of the room. So today, besides the youngsters that have been at our desks today, I want to welcome the candidates for South Dakota Youth of the Year from the Boys and Girls Clubs in Sioux Falls, Pierre, Wagner, Flanger, and Mission. Boys and Girls Clubs provide a safe and positive environment for young people to learn, grow, and become productive adults. Across South Dakota, there are 60 clubs serving more than 18,000 youth ages 5 to 18. So the Youth of the Year program is the Boys and Girls Clubs' premier recognition platform designed to promote and recognize service to club and community, academic performance, and contributions to family. So congratulations to the tremendous success of these young adults. Welcome to the South Dakota House of Representatives.
Madam Speaker, all members have voted.
Clerk will please display the vote.
Madam Speaker, there are ayes 60, nays 7, excused 3.
Senate Bill 135, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of the members-elect, is hereby declared passed. Are there any questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed correct.
Senate Bill 198, an act to restrict the use of a cell phone by a student during the school day.
Senate Bill 198, having had its second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Are there any remarks? Representative Rayfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have an amendment that I'd like moved at this time. It's 198C.
198C. Has it been distributed online?
It has.
Are you wishing to move it at this time?
Yes.
Is there a second? That motion by Representative Rayfeld to amend Senate Bill 198 with 198C having been made and seconded. Remarks on your motion, Representative Rayfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this amendment really just clarifies that an instructor may utilize a cell phone for instructional purposes during the school day, and then it also provides some clarifications for the use of a phone for health purposes and makes that language a little bit cleaner.
Thank you. Further remarks on the Rayfeld motion to amend? Any further remarks? Seeing no further remarks, the question before the House is the Rayfeld motion to amend Senate Bill 198 with Amendment 198C. This is a voice vote. All those in favor of the motion to amend will signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. We're going to do a division on that. All of those supporting the motion to amend will please stand. Motion carries. We are now on Senate Bill 198 as amended. Representative Rayfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. After that contentious amendment, thanks for listening to me on this bill. Well, I rise today not just as a legislator, but as a mom of three and a nurse who has spent my career caring for people when their health and their well-being are on the line. At the heart of this bill is really a simple question. Are we protecting our kids and giving them the best environment to learn? Teachers across the country report that cell phones are one of the biggest distractions in the classroom, and more than 90% say that student mental health challenges have increased in recent years. When students are constantly connected to phones and social media during the school day, it absolutely affects their focus, their behavior, and their emotional well-being. Research has shown that when schools implement cell phone bans, student test scores improve, especially for students who are already struggling academically. And we know that our students need every minute of instructional time. While South Dakota performs well compared to our other states around us, reading scores have declined in recent years, and we cannot afford additional distractions in the classroom. But this bill is absolutely about more than just phones. It's about our state stepping up when the well-being of our children is at stake. There are moments when issues go beyond district lines, when it touches every community, every classroom, and every family. When that happens, it becomes a matter of state responsibility. This is one of those moments. Some school districts are already trying to address this, but it is uneven. In some schools, the rules are firm. In others, teachers are left to manage it alone. And that inconsistency is frustrating for both educators, and it's also confusing for families. This bill does not diminish local leadership, it provides clarity. It establishes a consistent expectation that during the school day, that our classrooms are dedicated to learning. This is why a bell-to-bell policy matters. Partial policies that only limit phones during the instructional time of the day don't work. If the phones are allowed in hallways or at lunch, that's where the conflicts start, social media posts happen, and those disruptions come right back into the classroom. The bell-to-bell policy gives clarity for students, support for the teachers, and a healthier learning environment for kids, while still allowing exceptions for medical needs, emergencies, and accommodations. As a mom, I want my kids in classrooms where they can focus, build friendships, and learn without the constant pull of notifications. As a nurse, I know the toll that constant digital stress can take on young people's mental health. And as legislators, it is our responsibility to create environments where students can succeed and where teachers can teach. This bill is about protecting our kids and protecting their learning. I respectfully ask for your support.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 198. Representative Schubeck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to start off by saying I respect the intent of this bill. but I don't think it's the right answer. And going into this job, I talked to many of my superintendents and got their feedback because I knew this had been discussed in the past. And the feedback I got is each school has tried different approaches to regulating this. And some of them came away with different solutions, and some of them stuck with it. I talked to one school where they banned the cell phones completely, and then they repealed the ban. For whatever reason, it didn't work for them. And so I think this is something that we should leave up to local control and let each school district decide what's best for them. And then finally, I'll just close by saying, I think we all know that cell phones are a problem. I would encourage parents to delay giving your kids screen time as long as you can. Lots of research is showing delay giving them unlimited access until they're adults. So this is something that's become addictive. So again, I appreciate the intent behind the bill, but a lot of the problem is in those non-school hours where they're spending way too much time on their cell phones. During the school hours, most of them are not accessing their cell phones. It's not disruptive unless the teacher is just not regulating their classroom properly. And let's just leave this to the teachers in the school districts.
Thank you. Further remarks? Representative Schaefbauer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question for the Prime.
State your question.
Where is the Department of Ed on this type of policy?
Representative Rayfeld, do you wish to answer that question?
I do. So the Department of Education recently did a whole analysis on the entire, basically this issue and other issues in their recent report. What they found was absolutely that cell phones impact learning in a detrimental way. In fact, their findings went beyond that, where they were recommending that there is these policies in place within schools. Then their recommendation went on further to say that even though they recognize those recommendations, our legislature has failed to act, and so they were seeing that it was likely not going to be addressed at this level.
Follow-up or remarks? Representative Schaefbauer.
Yes, follow up.
State your question.
So there isn't a policy at the Department of Ed level that can regulate cell phones in classes. It has to be brought through the legislature. Can you help me with that process?
Representative Rayfeld, do you wish to answer that question?
I do. Well, the Department of Education, I believe, could absolutely act and create some policies and try to bring it forward at that level. However, you would need to see it at the school board level as well. And the point of this bill is to provide consistency across the school districts, because what we've seen, and you'll hear probably referenced on the floor today, is that 95% of schools say that they have a policy. But here's the problem with that. They're not consistent. So one school might allow you to have your phone in gym class, and then the next school might allow you to have your phone all day long. And then the next school may have a bell-to-bell policy. And what we've seen is the research shows that no matter what, cell phones are not good for your health. They impact your mental health, and they impact your ability to learn. And that's really the biggest problem we're talking about today, is that we want learning outcomes to be increasing. We want our students to be talking about education when they're at school and not be concerned with their phone at every ping. When a ping comes, it distracts them for 23 minutes.
Representative Schaefbauer, follow-up or remarks?
Just a few remarks.
Go ahead.
So as we, a tiny bit of latitude also, Mr. Speaker?
Latitude.
Just to speak to not specific bills that we've had on this floor, but about educational bills that we have had on this floor. I'll tie it all together.
Okay.
Okay, so like I said, there have been some previous bills that, maybe putting some ag in our curriculum or credits for extracurricular activities in our curriculum, and they did not, they could not get the policy across the board at the Department of Ed level. So this is what I'm failing to see with this specific bill being brought by the legislature. Why doesn't the Department of Ed put a specific bill or a specific policy in at their level, and it flows down to the schools? But again, come to the legislature, let's make a law and, bypass the Department of Ed. Do I approve with schools allowing kids to have cell phones? Maybe. My kids have been out of high school for quite a for years now. And yes, they had them, but teachers had a lot more control, 5, 6, 7 years ago than I'm guessing they do now with the impact of all the social media and stuff. So I don't think we have to make this a law. School boards, make it a policy. Teachers, enforce that policy. Be consistent throughout your whole school district. Do I want to see kids not have cell phones in an event of an emergency? Absolutely not. Do I want to see kids not have cell phones when they are recording something that is inappropriate? No, I want that protection for them. But I also want to make sure that the schools are consistent with their policies. Maybe that's what needs to be brought up at every single school board in this state. And maybe that has to be through the Department of Ed and trickle it down to the school boards. Be consistent in the policy. We don't have to make a law that says no cell phones. Parents, let's parent. I had strict restrictions with my kids on cell phone use, maybe between classes and in an event of emergency. So parents, school boards, let's set some ground rules, and teachers, let's make sure we keep those ground rules and hold those kids accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks, Representative Mulder.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I respect the concern about local control, and certainly I've made votes to support our school boards because I believe they are engaged, thoughtful, and committed. But I believe this conversation is much more than about cell phones. It's about the well-being of our adolescents across the state of South Dakota. Mental health and academic well-being of our children is at stake here. We know what's happened over the last decade. Academic performance has declined, behavior disruptions have increased, anxiety and emotional challenges amongst young people have risen sharply. But when a cell phone is present, we know, even when it's silenced laying face down on a desk, the research is clear that anxiety is there for kids. And we're asking for a bell-to-bell policy that they get to decide on. It doesn't dictate what the bell-to-bell policy is. Again, this is not just an education issue, it's a long-term health issue. In this chamber, we've spent considerable amounts of time discussing community health challenges, workforce shortages, behavioral health access, cost pressures, and hospital sustainability. If we're serious about improving health outcomes of our adolescent community, we need to be willing to act upstream and not just react to the circumstances in front of us. We have an opportunity here to act upstream. We can demonstrate by reducing digital overexposure during the school day that it will contribute to measurable improvements in youth mental health. And if we do that, we position South Dakota as a state that leads with prevention, not reaction. A state that addresses a root cause rather than simply managing downstream. That strengthens our credibility for future rural health innovation funding, which we passed earlier this year, gave authority for. It strengthens our case when we seek that federal flexibility. And most importantly, it strengthens the future of our kids. This is not a partisan issue, it's not a regional issue, it's not local versus state issue. It's making a difference for the mental health of our kids. This bill provides those clear guardrails, it restores classroom environments, and it opens the door for South Dakota to lead in a meaningful statewide conversation about the well-being of our adolescents. When something affects every child in South Dakota, it's appropriate for the state to act. It's not about control, it's about us leading. And I encourage your green vote on Senate Bill 198.
Thank you. Further remarks, Representative Knowles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I just wanted to follow up with kind of something that the representative from Brown County said. You know, the Department of Ed opposed this bill in committee because of the local control issue. As was mentioned, 95% of our school districts already have a policy in place. So most of them are not asking for this. They're already enforcing it. And that was a huge issue of mine in committee that was never answered, was how is this policy going to be enforced any differently than what 95% of them are? It's still going to be the teachers, the school administrator, the school board, or are we hiring someone at the state level to go to all the school districts to enforce this? I guess I'm unclear on that. I still think it's going to be on the teachers. We had opposition from principals, from teachers that said they have integrated them into their classrooms. They make exceptions for kids that are working on the farm and checking cows during calving season. If they need to go home, they need to check their cattle and help on the farm. And I think a broader question is, I understand the impacts that social media and phones can have on children, the bullying that can occur. But there was a comment made that we should ban phones for all kids outside of school hours. They're only in school 35 hours. The rest of the week, they're at home. So that does really come down to the parents monitoring that. But I think the broader question is, you know, we're gonna ban cell phones for kids, but they're gonna go out into the workforce, they're gonna go in college and have a job, and they need to be able to use that tool effectively. So maybe in that high school level, we should be integrating that, showing them what useful and amazing tool it is, that we all have a computer in our pockets to use. So I think before we do a blanket wide state law ban on this, I think we need to take a look. None of my school districts are asking me for this. You know, this has come up at every single Cracker Barrel I've had this year, and they're not asking for this. They already have policies. What works for them works great. You know, I have a large school district, Mitchell, and I also have very smaller school districts that are handling it differently. So I would just encourage you to vote no on this today. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks, Representative Mucky.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've wrestled with this one a lot. I live in two worlds. I'm the son of a superintendent in a rural school district, and I'm also a former professional in a youth suicide prevention nonprofit. So as you might imagine, I live at the juxtaposition of this bill a lot. When I first saw this bill in respect to the prime sponsor, you know, one of the things I first thought of immediately was, I really hate this bill, and for a lot of reasons involving local control. But as I've come around to this as well as a topic, I put on my other hat. We're talking about the mental health of our youth. Suicide is the leading cause of death in South Dakota for South Dakotans under the age of 29. 10 to 29. So when you're talking about 10-year-olds and suicide, we have a real problem in our state. I understand this bill, and I appreciate the prime sponsor also bringing forward the amendment, because I think it makes it a better bill. I think it ultimately comes back to creating some flexibility. Now, I'm not going to tell you which way to vote today, because honestly, I've still been wrestling with this even as we're sitting here right now. But what I think about with this topic in particular, the conversations about local control and working with our school boards and superintendents, that's a legitimate argument. Overwhelming majority of our schools have for the longest time had a cell phone policy. They have those. But also, do we have a serious problem with the usage of more advanced technology and youth mental health? We absolutely do. So speaking to you as a professional from that world, that is a serious problem. This is one way to address that. At some points in this conversation as well, I can tell you I still have concerns about blanket statements going to our school boards and superintendents from the standpoint of, I do believe in local control, and I also believe when we're funding state education and bringing things to districts, we have to give them the resources and partnership to make this successful. Whether that's funding or otherwise, there's a lot of moments in this work as legislators, past legislators, this body, we have not been very good partners to our schools in trying to implement these types of policies. So as we think about that, I think this is one way, at least the amended version, I think does a better job of accomplishing that. But I just want to implore to you, if you're looking at this from both sides of the issue, I hope that you understand we do have a real problem with mental health for our youth. And we do have a real case to be made in talking about local control. Like I said, I'm not going to tell you how to vote one way or the other today, but I just want you to understand this is, for a remarkably straightforward bill in most regards, this is a lot more complicated than we give credit to at times. So I encourage you to weigh the merits of this today. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Further remarks? Representative Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. I've been known to say that this is the best gig in the state. And the reason I say that is that, you know, we're just one of over a little about 4,000 people who've ever had the honor and the privilege to serve in this House. And I know that all of you take that very, very seriously, and I do. But the other reason is that these are the kind of bills where you determine, you think you know what your values are, and these values get tested on bills just like this. And that's what makes it really an important thing for us to serve in this regard. My position really looks at it this way. You know, we know this, that whenever you give any of your rights away to whether it's the federal government or the state government, here's the one thing you can count on. They never give them back. They never give them back. And so my concern is obviously about local control, and I'll bet every one of us in this room have talked about it, have used it as a reason to do something and not to do something. But I will just tell you, this bill does take away local control from our school boards, and there's no doubt about it. And when you do that, and that issue, the school boards will never get that right back. They'll never get that authority back. You know, we've brought up this issue about the cell phones many times, and so what did the school boards do? They reacted without state mandates to do that. And as was testified by the good representative, over 94, maybe 95% of our school boards have already done that. Now, did they adopt a single one exactly like everybody else's? No. And why should they? We've got big schools, we've got little schools, we've got city schools, we've got rural schools, and there's another word for that, and it's called flexibility. And so we shouldn't have to make everybody do that. And so we don't need this mandate. You know, they talked about the benefits of the cell phones. And, you know, we had an individual who drove twice to the Education Committee to come to talk to us. He didn't have to do that, but he talked about how Kadoka handled that situation. And not only did he say, you know, this is a safety issue, but we in our school districts are teaching kids responsibility. It's responsibility on how to use those phones. And so I think there's a second part about it. You know, there's kind of an underlying thing here. It's assuming that our school boards and our teachers are unable or incapable of handling this situation. And I really don't believe that's true. I understand that there are different studies out there that conclude this or they conclude that. But I guess I'm kind of one of those guys that really likes the opportunity to hear somebody who's actually in the classroom, who's actually on the school board, who's actually an administrator, who's then saying, this is how we've handled it. And it may be different than what it is in other communities, but I was very impressed with the benefits that he talked about, how the students use the cell phones to look at QR codes and do those type of things in that regard. And I understand other states are doing this, and they do that, but we're not in Kansas. We're not in Utah. We're here, Dorothy, right in South Dakota. And so I know there's issues about suicide and mental health and bullying, but I will venture to say that those all occurred before there were cell phones. And I also don't think it has anything to do with reading proficiency. We oftentimes make these quotations about what the percentages are in the state, but you know, doesn't it be more accurate to do it school by school instead of lumping us all together in one situation? I think our schools protect our students. Do we hear anything in the news about any of our students getting hurt in school? We're not hearing about that. And oftentimes it seems to me we're doing a lot of blaming on the cell phones that quite frankly don't exist. Our schools have their own needs and their own flexibility, and I think they're capable of handling it. I don't think, quite frankly, the amendment makes this bill better. And the reason I don't think so, because it shifts authority away from the school board to make that decision about the cell phones to the teachers. Because what does the amendment say? The teacher wants to do that, they can do that, okay? Well, that gives the teachers authority over a school board who may have said, we don't want them to use them at all. This bill would allow them to do that. And then you're going to have situations where some teachers will say yes and other teachers may say no, and you've got a problem there. And you know what? The other thing that it does too, and it's not maybe an unintended consequence, but let's say that you have a school district that has banned cell phones in the school. What would this bill allow? It would allow a teacher to overrule the school board as it relates to the issue with the cell phones. So for those reasons, I don't think we should be giving the teachers authority over the school boards. I think our school districts are handling it properly, and they should have their own flexibility to handle this.
Thank you. Further remarks? Representative Schwanz, did you want to speak? You just got so upset last time I didn't call on you. So.
That's okay. That's okay.
I didn't want to blow it
I
this
was
time.
kind of passionate about talking about this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, I just want to stand here to talk about a few things that happened over the summer on the Teacher Compensation Review Board. I was conflicted with this bill and the local control view, but I also understand addressing the addictive tendencies towards technology and cell phones with our youth. Today, I just want to address a few things from that summer review. There were 4 recommendations on the Blue Ribbon Task Force. The 4th one is what I'm going to read to you and validate how the topic has been in conversation. Recommendation number 4, direct the South Dakota Department of Education to draft a brief white paper on best practices of the presence of smartphones in schools and the effects of personal technology on student behavior in school. It must also be said that various researchers and social commentators have identified the negative effects of the use of smartphones by the American youth. These social ills include social deprivation, which means time spent with friends, especially since 2010. Sleep deprivation, since 2010. Teenagers are experiencing less than 7 hours of sleep at night, which is part of parent control too. Number 3, attention breakdown, due to the apparently deliberate inducement to remain transfixed to their smartphones, which is unnecessary scrolling. Number 4, addiction. Most people who own smartphones have personally experienced the addictive natures and their pull. And please don't get mad for me saying this, but video games, they also have addictive tendencies, and I don't believe in them either. However, today is about cell phones in schools, so I will leave you with this. The Columbia University Department of Psychiatry associated the age of the smartphone with compulsive use of technology, dependency, greater stress, anxiety, sleep deprivation, and threats of mental health. The reality in the schools of most, if not all, public schools in the state now have some restriction on smartphone usages. That is correct. South Dakota Searchlight indicated, though on a limited survey response, that 1/3 of South Dakota school districts remove or lock away student phones. So let's finally discuss this. We're talking about local control versus urgent need. Today's legislation is acting on this issue. Most of us seem united in the sense that cell phones are detracting from the lives and academic performances of the state students. But there is a strong commitment to local control and the sense that those nearest the situation are the best able to make the decisions on these such things. So today, our decision is whether we believe in local control for cell phone issues or whether the state should step in and help and address the needs and put in more guardrails and implementations to protect our youth. The conflict I feel right now is very real. But I also felt the need to share this information because we're all here to vote, and it's an important vote, especially because it affects us all very differently in our districts. In close, I really don't know how I'm gonna vote. I'm very conflicted on this, but I will tell you this today. My passion that I feel to help the kids in addictive tendencies will always supersede my popularity and my vote. So I hope that we all make the best decision today. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks, Representative Arland.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a tough one, I think, for a lot of us. I echo a lot of the statements made by the previous speaker. A couple summers ago, I had the opportunity to participate in the Youth Access to Internet Summer Study. I chaired the subcommittee on cell phone usage in schools, so I read every response in the survey that we've talked about multiple times on the floor today and how most schools have a policy in place. But what we haven't talked about is some of those written-in comments that we received on that survey. There were a ton of written-in comments from administrators saying, we have a policy, it's not strict enough. Can't get my school board to go stricter. They're worried about parent feedback. Could you guys please be the bad guys so I don't have to be the bad guy in my small community? So A couple years ago when we talked about this in the summer study, I actually made the recommendation. We didn't do a policy at that time, and up until about a week ago, I was a no on this bill. My lifelong best friend lives in North Dakota, and I was chatting with her to and from Pierre, and I said, hey, bestie, you know, I know North Dakota passed a cell phone ban. How has that gone for your kids? And she's like, Amber, I was so adamantly against it because I wanted to be able to, a lot of what we've heard, right? We want to get in contact with our kids. She's like, the schools have done an amazing job of working through this. It's gone really well. And she said, I was such a no. And she's like, I'm so firmly a yes. And so from that actually changed my mind because my bestie has had a wonderful experience with this in North Dakota, which is a great peer state for us to look at on this. You know, and some great comments are made about parents needing to parent. I agree. I am so in on that. I am incredibly restrictive with my kids' access to tablets and technology, but where I can't parent is the other kid who's showing my kids something I don't want them to see at school. I have no ability to keep another kid from showing my kids something I don't want them to see at school. And so between my bestie and my mama bear coming out there, that really informed why I'm gonna be a yes today.
Thank you. Further remarks, Representative DeGroot.
I have no prepared remarks. I have no outline to follow, and I really wasn't going to speak today. But after the good representative from Yankton spoke, he started talking about values, and if you have values, you don't change your mind unless there's some overwhelming evidence that you need to change your mind. I was a no on this vote. I was a yes on this vote. I've talked to my friends. They're all over the board. Most of them are pretty much ready for a policy. Brookings has a policy, so I have no skin in this game. My superintendent, and there's no pushback from the parents at all. But I have been such a staunch local control person. I think I was the only one that voted against the eagle feather being displayed at graduation. I think it was like 69-1 because I always thought it was local control. I did make a mistake on that because I think that's a law that we would need to, but I've changed my mind and I want the good representative from Sioux Falls. I told her I was gonna vote, you know, with this, but I now have to change my mind and vote the other way. I understand the good guy from Sioux Falls and all the things in it, and both you folks from Sioux Falls talked about mental health, et cetera, but I'm sorry, I'm gonna be a no on this vote.
Thank you. Representative Poirier.
I have a little sister who stayed overnight with us who is getting ready to go on a camping trip, and I'm asking her a bunch of questions, and she said, yeah, this is gonna be really great. We're gonna go out of town. We're gonna go in the mountains. We're gonna learn all these different things, but we can't take our cell phones. And I said, okay, well, give me your cell phone. I'll keep it here. And she's like, no, I was gonna ask if you had an extra one. And I said, well, why do you need an extra one? Well, because I'm gonna turn in that one and I'm gonna keep mine. And I was, you little booger. So she came back. I didn't have an extra one. So I said, sorry, I can't help you break the rules. I know better now. I can't help you. Well, she found one. And when she came back, I said, so how'd your cell phone thing go? And she said, oh, it went great. Did anybody find out? No. Did everybody turn in fake phones? Yes. I'm voting no. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Further remarks, Representative Weems.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I'm going to come at this from a little bit different attitude or different perspective, in maybe a couple of ways. Because I've heard on this House floor all session how taxpayers should have a say in education. And, you know, here's the deal. This is taxpayer money that we're spending to allow kids to be using their cell phones when they're supposed to be taught school. That's a big problem. That's a huge problem. When my kids were in school, if they used their cell phone, it got brought to the office and I had to go pick it up. It wasn't just put your cell phone away. It was, if you want your phone back, your parent has to come pick it up. Now, I'm not advocating for that policy, though I think it was pretty effective. And I want to mention that my school district does have a policy on this, but, you know, when you think about yourself and your phone, when you get a ping that is a little bit distracting, don't you want to respond to it right away? Don't you want to look at that right away? Don't you want to take action? And let's talk about this. These are kids. What they think is important isn't the same as us. So I think about how distracting that is for a kid to have that interruption when they're trying to learn calculus, or when they're trying to learn history, or when they're trying to learn how to read. Because the other thing that we're not talking about is not every parent gives a cell phone to their kid at the same age. Some get them in first grade. Some get them older. But, you know, this bill doesn't say, no, you can have them in high school, but you can't have them in elementary. It says, no, we're not going to have cell phones in our classrooms from bell to bell. And I like that policy because my money goes to educate those kids. My tax dollars go to educate their kids. We keep hearing how our test scores are going down. Well, I don't think that's what I want as a result. And I know how distracting it is for me to have my cell phone ping when I'm trying to do something else. And for kids with social media and the addictive behavior of that, all you need is one thing to pop up, and I bet they're scrolling faster than we have ever thought of scrolling. So I just want you to think about it from that perspective, that it is really distracting, and then it does cause huge mental health issues. It's probably one of the biggest impacts on mental health in our children is the use of their cell phone. And if anybody has a child who struggled with mental health issues, anxiety, anything like that, this just compounds it. So I would ask you to vote green on the bill and support the bill. And let's put the focus back on teaching our kids instead of saying it's allowed to be distracting. Okay, I'm going to add one more thing because I meant to mention this. Here's the deal. Oh, I get a full minute. Here we go. If my husband and I were youth leaders, and when we were youth leaders, cell phones were just coming out. And so everybody wanted their cell phone handy. So we used it as a teaching tool to get their attention, and we used it to teach them, and then we said, now let's put it away and focus on what we're actually doing. And it was extremely effective. So I like the amendment, and I'd urge you to pass the bill.
Thank you. Further remarks, Representative Jorgensen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this, and I've gone back and forth. I have definitely gone back and forth, but I am definitely supporting this because this summer I actually read a book, and it was called The Anxious Generation, How the Great Rewiring of Childhood is Causing an Epidemic of Mental Illness. And it had evidence from studies, but it's showing the effects of smartphones, and they are highly, highly addictive. And I think we need to protect our children. And also, what are we doing? We need to get back to, we say this over and over again, we need to get back to the basics. Let's just have a standard policy across the state, and let's handle this. But I want to talk about some of the concerns that have come up. Okay, so there's emergency and safety concerns, right? The objection was students need phones during emergencies. Well, Emergency professionals emphasize controlled communication over individual device use. So during crisis, phones can spread misinformation, overload networks, distract students from instructions, unintentionally expose locations. Schools maintain structured emergency communication systems designed to contact families safely and accurately. Okay, then there's the parental rights argument. Parents should decide whether students use phones. And I like what the previous speaker said about what if you're a parent who doesn't allow your child to have, or student to have a phone? My daughter doesn't allow her kids to look at any of that. And they get to watch TV, I think, once a week for 20 minutes. I mean, she's very strict. But you go into a public school situation and now you can't control that. Parents can still decide whether their child owns or brings a phone. The thing is that when you're in classroom, you're supposed to be being instructed. You're supposed to have instructional hours. Enforcement burden on teachers. Teachers become phone police. That's the objection. Well, bell-to-bell policies simplify enforcement because expectations are clear. Phones are off and stored during the school day. Clear rules eliminate constant negotiation between teachers and students. Enforcement shifts towards school-wide procedures rather than individual classroom disputes. Districts that adopt consistent policies often report fewer interruptions and more instructional time. Cost concerns. A ban requires costly systems. Many districts implement bans using simple procedures such as phones kept in backpacks or classroom storage. No specialized equipment is required. Existing discipline systems can handle enforcement. Now, the other one that came up today was student autonomy over regulations. Students should learn responsible phone use. I think phones are so addictive. That's like saying, there's so many things that are addictive, but phones are extremely addictive, and especially when your brain is not fully developed. Schools already restrict behaviors that interfere with learning. Adolescents are still developing impulse control and attention regulation. Structured environments help students develop focus and engagements. Some students rely on phones, and I think the amendment covered this. And it also covered phones being used as educational tools. Students will work around the ban. We heard that one, and I'm sure they will. Students are definitely going to work around the ban. Policies do not require perfect compliance to improve outcomes. Clear expectations change school culture over time. Similar statewide rules such as attendance and testing requirements remain effective despite imperfect enforcement. And the last one is there will be resistance. Yep. Initial resistance is common with new school policies, and I think that was pointed out earlier with what happened in North Dakota, and now they're seeing improvement because of that policy. Parental support often increases after implementation. I just think we need to have a consistent policy across the state. So I'm voting green. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Overweg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I respectfully yield my time to the bill sponsor.
Thank you. Representative Rayfeld, in closing.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but that kind of felt like the longest debate we've had on this floor. And so I'll keep my comments brief and respectful, and I really do appreciate the ability that we've had on this House floor to talk about a really important issue. And I want you guys to understand, I do come at this from a place of, I am a mom, and I am a nurse, and I care very much about the well-being of our children in this state. And because I do so much, I did a ton of research on this topic. And I could not find one piece of evidence that justified me not carrying this bill. I couldn't find one piece of evidence in the entire scientific community that said it is beneficial for you to have a cell phone in school. We can talk about the issues that were brought up, the local control. I will say that I believe that this actually restores local control to the school and to the teachers because they're not the bad guy anymore. And they can now control what they're supposed to control, which is the education of our kids, the well-being of our children. And finally, the 95% of schools have policies. That may be true, but again, I want you to remember it's not consistent. These policies aren't consistent. They vary in the way that they're implemented. This does give the school districts the ability to control how they implement those policies, but ultimately, I want to end by telling you just a little bit of a story. So I have a 10, 8, and a 2-year-old, and we have had incredible difficulties just with our 10-year-old and our 8-year-old in regards to these, their little tablets. So much so that we have to actually take them away for long periods of time for them to almost de-technology from them because their behavior is absolutely horrendous. So I am one of these moms looking at each of you in this room today. I am going to be one of those moms that doesn't let my kid have a cell phone probably until they're 16. That's kind of the line I've drawn in the sand. And from a mom's standpoint, I don't want, I'm sorry, your kid or your kid who has their cell phone giving those capabilities to my kid while they're in school because I want my kid to be learning and laughing and hanging out with their friends at school. That's what it should be about. So I ask for your green vote today for moms like me who want to make sure that our kids don't have access to bad content and that their school day is full of learning and joy. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further remarks, the question before the House is final passage. Senate Bill 198. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. The clerk will unlock the voting machine, and the members will proceed to vote. Representative Mortensen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A personal privilege, please.
Granted.
Thank you. Well, folks, my parents are here, and they got to witness a very comprehensive debate just now. Kurt and Kim Mortensen, they're from Fort Pierre, and of course, they brought me into this world in general and raised me, and this might surprise some of you, I was kind of a difficult youth, and so they had, no, it's true. They, anyway, but you know, they're also the people who really allow me to be in this world now, I mean, they live 5 doors upriver from me, and they help raise my kids, and we practice law together, and we punch cows together, and they are such an important part of my life in a general way. Would you help me welcome them to the House?
Representative Norstrup. Representative Schwanz.
Representative Jensen.
Personal privilege.
Granted.
Thank you. We were unable to make the party last night, and on behalf of myself and my evil twin, just wanted to thank you for this trophy. It doesn't say exactly what it's about, but I can only imagine. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, my God.
Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
The clerk will please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there are ayes 28, nays 39, excused 3.
House Bill 198, having failed to receive the affirmative vote of the majority of members elect, is hereby declared lost.
Senate Bill 39, an act to revise provisions relating to industrial hemp.
Senate Bill 39, having had its second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Are there any remarks? Representative Schubeck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill is a simple bill. Right now, we employ 3 FTEs to oversee our industrial hemp program, and The simple fact is that we only have 3,700 acres of industrial hemp grown in South Dakota. So there's not enough demand to justify the FTEs. So we're spending $200,000 a year to oversee this program, which comes out to about $50 an acre that we're spending just to oversee the program. So we're going to allow the USDA to oversee this, and so we're going to save that money. So thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 39? Any further remarks? A little shorter than the last bill. Seeing no further remarks. Question for the House is final passage of Senate Bill 39. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. The clerk will unlock the voting machine and the members will proceed to vote.
Representatives Norstrup, Representative Rayfeld,
We'll be at ease for just a moment. You might have seen the lights just flickered, and now our system up here is not working. So we're going to get our tech gurus to come in and help us, and we are going to do a roll call vote by voice. Let's go.
ready? Representative Andera. Andera votes aye. Representative Arlant. Arlant votes aye. Representative Auk. Auk votes aye. Representative Elward. Elward votes no. Representative Baummuller. Baummuller votes aye. Representative Baxter. Baxter votes no. Representative DeGroot. DeGroot votes aye. Representative Derby. Derby votes aye. Representative Duffy. Duffy votes aye. Representative Emery. Emery votes aye. Representative Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald votes aye. Representative Fosness. Fosness votes aye. Representative Garcia. Garcia votes aye. Representative Goodwin. Goodwin votes aye. Representative Gosh. Gosh votes, Gosh pass. Gosh votes aye. Representative Greenfield. Greenfield votes aye. Representative Halverson. Halverson votes aye. Representative Healy. Healy votes aye. Representative Heerman. Heerman votes aye. Representative Heineman. Heineman votes aye. Representative Hughes. Hughes votes aye. Representative Hunt. Hunt votes yea. Nay. No. Representative Hunt votes no. Representative Ismay. Ismay votes no. Representative Jameson. Jameson votes aye. Representative Jensen. Representative Jensen votes nay. Representative Jordan. Jordan votes no. Representative Jorgensen. Jorgensen votes aye. Representative Casson. Casson votes aye. Representative Kaiser. Kaiser votes no. Representative Colbeck. Colbeck votes aye. Representative Cole. Cole votes aye. Representative Ladner. Ladner votes aye. Representative Lems. Lems votes aye. Representative Manhart. Manhart votes no. Representative Massey. Massey votes aye. Representative May. May votes aye. Representative Moore. Moore votes aye. Representative Mortensen. Mortensen votes aye. Representative Mucky. Mucky votes aye. Representative Mullally. Mullally votes no. Representative Mulder. Mulder votes aye. Representative Knowles. Knowles votes aye. Representative Norstrup. Norstrup votes aye. Representative Odenbach. Odenbach votes aye. Representative Overweg. Overweg votes aye. Representative Peterson. Peterson votes aye. Representative Poyer. Poyer votes aye. Representative Randolph. Randolph votes aye. Representative Rayfelt. Rayfelt votes aye. Representative Reimer. Reimer votes aye. Representative Reich. Reich votes aye. Representative Rice. Rice votes no. Representative Roby. Roby votes aye. Representative Rowe. Rowe votes aye. Representative Schaefbauer. Schaefbauer votes no. Representative Schwanz. Schwanz votes aye. Representative Shorma. Shorma votes aye. Representative Schubeck. Schubeck votes aye. Representative Sharda. Sharda votes aye. Representative Stevens. Stephen votes aye. Representative Uribalk. Uribalk votes aye. Representative Van Diepen. Van Diepen votes aye. Representative Wahlberg. Wahlberg votes aye. Representative Weems. Weems votes aye. Representative Weisgram. Weisgram votes aye. Representative Whitman. Whitman votes aye. Speaker Hansen.
Aye.
Speaker votes aye.
Garcia votes no.
Representative Garcia votes no.
Representative Gosh.
Just a quick personal privilege. If you guys are having internet issues, the LRC Pectoral is down. Just switch to Rushmore. You'll get your computer back.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
Clerk will please announce the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were ayes 55, nays 12, excused 3.
Senate Bill 39, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elects, is hereby declared passed. Any questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed correct.
I'm not sure what to do with this vote, I guess. Senate Bill 159, an act to revise requirements pertaining to the minimum age for marriage.
Senate Bill 159, having had its second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Are there any remarks? Representative Randolph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, I bring before you today Senate Bill 159. In recent years, there have been a national effort to ban marriage in the states until age of 18. That idea has been presented in the South Dakota legislature a couple times, but it's always failed. This legislation before you today is a solution to what those previous bills aim to accomplish. This legislation makes 18 the clear and consistent legal standard for marriage in our state. It closes the current loophole that allows minors to marry with a minimal oversight and replaces it with stronger safeguards, judicial review, in-person hearings, written findings about coercion and safety, a 30-day waiting period, a two-parent consent requirement, and a four-year age gap limit. Across the country, states are reevaluating their minor marriage laws. Many have moved to ban marriage under 18 entirely. Others, like this proposal, are tightening exceptions to ensure that when a minor is involved, the system prioritizes safety and long-term welfare of the matrimony. So why does this matter? Because children are uniquely vulnerable to coercion and exploitation. A minor cannot sign most contracts, cannot purchase alcohol, cannot vote, yet in some circumstances can enter into a lifelong legal commitment with profound legal and physical consequences. We know from national data that marriage or child marriage correlates with higher rates of domestic violence, interrupted education, economic instability, and early pregnancy. These same vulnerabilities are risk factors associated with exploitation and trafficking. In some cases, marriage has been used as a legal shield, allowing adults to avoid scrutiny for relationships that would otherwise trigger statutory protections. This bill helps curb these issues. Importantly, this legislation does not impose a blanket prohibition without consideration. It allows a narrow pathway for 16 and 17-year-olds, but only with meaningful oversight. Parents or a legal guardian must sign for their minor child, or judges must meet privately with each participant. They must make written findings about safety and coercion, and a waiting period ensures decisions are not rushed. This bill strengthens our laws, protects vulnerable minors, and aligns our state with a growing national commitment to safeguarding children. Please vote green. Thank you.
Thank you. For the remarks, Representative Rayfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have an amendment.
What's the number of that amendment?
159H.
159H. Is it distributed online?
Yes, it is.
Do you wish to move it at this time?
I do.
The Rayfeld motion to amend Senate Bill 159 with Amendment 159H having been made and seconded, and I just want to make sure everybody has access to that amendment. We're having some technical difficulties here. Does everybody have access to the amendment? It's 159H. Okay, remarks on your motion, Representative Rayfeld.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I really want to thank the good representative from Pennington County for bringing this bill and starting this conversation on the House side. All of his arguments for what he was talking about is precisely why I'm bringing this amendment, and that is that we have a duty in this state to protect minor children from being coerced into contracts that are lifelong, no matter what. And this provides that clarity that children should not be married until 18. The amendment simply states that if you are not 18 years old, then you cannot get married. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks on the Rayfeld motion to amend? Representative Randolph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First off, I'll say, and the sponsor of it knows, this is an extremely unfriendly amendment. This was actually, this amendment, I don't know if it was the exact language, but there was a bill brought on the Senate side last year to do just this very thing, and it failed. And I believe there was another attempt back in 2024. Seems like it was a House bill, if I remember, but I can't remember for sure. But anyway, it also failed. So we've shot this down several times, and so It's shown that the body doesn't have an appetite for this. So please vote. Red, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks on the Rehfeld motion to amend? Any further remarks? Seeing no further remarks, the question before the House is the Rehfeld motion to amend Senate Bill 159 with Amendment 159H. All those in favor of the motion to amend will signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. The Speaker is in doubt. The House will divide. All those in favor of the motion to amend will please stand. That motion fails. We're back on Senate Bill 159. Any further remarks? Any further remarks? Seeing no further remarks, anything in closing, Representative Randolph? Seeing no further remarks, the question before the House is final passage of Senate Bill 159. All those in favor will vote yea, those opposed nay. The clerk will unlock the voting machine, and the members will proceed to vote. Representative Uribalk.
Personal privilege.
Granted.
I would like everyone to welcome the mayor of what I think is the best city in the state, but I am a little biased. So welcome Mayor Solomon to the People's House.
Representative Goodwin.
Personal privilege, please.
Granted.
I'd like to welcome the sheriff, what I think is the best county in the state, Sheriff Mueller. Please stand.
Representative Northrup.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We have a guest, former legislator Fred Deutsch. Welcome, Fred, if you would, for me.
Representative Poirier. Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
Clerk will please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there are ayes 40, nays 27, excused 3.
Senate Bill 159, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elected, is hereby declared passed. Any questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed correct.
Senate Bill 171, an act to amend provisions pertaining to the processing of absentee ballots and to declare an emergency.
Senate Bill 171, having had its second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Are there any remarks? Representative Heineman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, body. I bring Senate Bill 171 as amended. Absentee voting, whether in person or by mail, has become a very popular way for people to vote. What many do not realize is that when voting absentee, the work on the auditor's office is about triple the work, and as compared to voting on election day. The best option for timely election results is when our citizens vote on election day, but since progress has not been made in reducing absentee voting, the auditors needed some legislative changes to process absentee ballots. Currently, with proper notification to county parties, the auditors may begin processing absentee ballots the morning of election day and can then begin to tabulate ballots prior to the close of polls on election day. Most of the changes in Senate Bill 171A will impact counties that have an absentee ballot precinct, which is usually counties with a high count of absentee ballots, like Minnehaha. Minnehaha, I think, last time had 30,000 absentee ballots to process. The changes in this bill would greatly improve the timeliness of reporting results for the large counties. Personally, I would appreciate the collaboration that's occurred among all of the auditors in coming up with some of these changes. Auditors from small and large counties support this bill, along with some of the election integrity proponents. This bill has passed the Senate and House committees with full support and passed the Senate floor with just 2 nay votes. And I could go through some of the key points, but after the cell phone bill, I think I'll shorten it up a little bit. A couple of things you need to understand, simply put, that it really only affects about 2 or 3 counties, but that's important. And it actually has a larger effect because, like, I'm in Moody County, their election results are out by 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. But my precinct, I have 17 precincts in Minnehaha County. And so we don't get that result for sometimes 24 to 48 hours later. So there are other counties that are affected by it, but it would really help, in particular, Minnehaha and Pennington County. And a couple of important points. One of them is that it just moves it one day, the day before the election, they can have absentee ballots processed. And I won't go through that process unless you really want me to. And then the second thing, there's an emergency clause, because we would like this to be in effect with the primary that's going to happen here in June. So I urge your support. If you have any questions, please ask, but thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 171, Representative Lems.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just speaking to this bill a little bit, we heard this in House State Affairs. This is literally just about efficiency for our auditors of especially our larger counties. It gives them another tool in their toolbox to get this done in a timely manner, and especially like we heard, especially our larger counties like the prime sponsor mentioned in Minnehaha. I believe the last election they had 30,000 of these to process. So basically what we heard is they're going to be getting these, and if they deem it necessary, they're going to be able to, that day before, take the envelope that these come in and just separate them. Those ballots will not be counted until Election Day. They will go into a locked box, and they'll be kept, but it'll just speed up the process for them. This is a good bill, passed 11-0 in House State Affairs, and I would ask for your green vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 171, Representative Reimer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to echo the comments of the last couple of speakers. I do think this is a good bill because I do think that it's making the absentee process more efficient. But I will say, I do think there needs to be some correction in the bill with some of the language, and I do hope that they fix it on the Senate side. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the body, a couple years ago, we brought a bill here to allow the auditors to open and sort the ballots, the absentee ballots, on the day of the election, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning on the eastern part of the state, because the polls on the western part of the state were open at that time. They could open and sort them, check the signatures, make sure everything was correct, and that was done on the day of the election, that Tuesday. This bill just gives them one more day, and I ask the auditors to be sure, and they said they would, to be sure that those ballots are guarded and within the vicinity of their auditor's office before they are counted and run through the machine the next day. So I would support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 171? Any further remarks? Anything in closing, Representative Heineman? Representative Heineman in closing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The question of cleaning up some language, we did do an amendment, and that amendment did have the election superintendent or his or her designee. We added that word. I'm doing a little bit from memory, but then we also made sure that we put in there that you cannot count any ballots the day before election. And it also says you can count the absentee ballots during election day, starting at 8 o'clock, but they are not tabulated and put it on total vote until after the vote, after the polls close. So I think to address one of the questions about whether we clean that up, that's very clear in that amendment. We did address that. So just again, I urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further remarks, the question before the House is final passage of Senate Bill 171. Due to the emergency clause, Senate Bill 171 does require a 2/3 vote. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. The clerk will unlock the voting machine, and the members will proceed to vote.
Representative Cole. Representative Derby. Cole votes aye. Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
The clerk will please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were ayes 56, nays 11, excused 3.
Senate Bill 171, having received the affirmative vote of 2/3 of the members elect, is hereby declared passed. Any questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed correct.
Senate Bill 76, an act to authorize loans from the South Dakota Housing Infrastructure Fund for airport infrastructure.
Senate Bill 76, having had its second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Are there any remarks? Representative Kolbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members of the body. I'm bringing forth today to you Senate Bill 76. This is a bill that is an act to authorize loans, and I'll repeat that, loans from the South Dakota Housing Infrastructure Fund for airport infrastructure. As many of you know, last year we brought a bill, and that would have been a bill that would have transferred money from this housing authority fund into the aeronautics fund, which is under the authority of the Department of Transportation, that airports could use to get grants from, to use that money to leverage extra money from the federal government to help with their infrastructure and also with certain projects at their airports. What we have done here is, with the help from GOED, the housing authority people, and the executive branch, we were asking that we allow the airports, Sioux Falls and Rapid City particularly, to be able to borrow, or we will loan them $15 million at a 2% interest over a 20-year period of time. The money will be paid back, specifically back into the Housing Infrastructure Fund along with the interest. Now, some of us, including myself, that are not probably real good with math, but did take math, if you figured that out, that'd be $600,000 a year in interest. If those loans were held at $30 million between those two airports a year, which goes right back into the Housing Infrastructure Fund, which can be used by that department to grant out or loan out, I should say, to people that would want to, contractors, whoever, to build infrastructure into housing projects, et cetera. Each airport would receive the $15 million towards that. I'm just going to give you a little quick information, and then I'll turn it over to other people. The city of Sioux Falls loaned the airport in Sioux Falls, which is not a municipal airport. It is owned by the Sioux Falls Airport Authority. It's one of the only airports in South Dakota that is not municipally owned, that's federally approved airport. Rapid City is a federally approved municipal-owned airport. So City of Sioux Falls, for the first time last year, ever in the history of our airport, loaned the airport $5 million and was hoping that the legislature this year could help them out with some money to help continue their construction. The airport in Sioux Falls has started Project 1, and this money will be used for the second phase of their project. They've got 3 phases to improve that airport, to bring in nonstop flights, to add 7 more gates to the airport in order to park and accommodate more aircraft. You all have been in an airport, or I should say, sat on an airplane, either somewhere in the United States, waiting for that aircraft to be able to get to a gate to get unloaded. And that's very inconvenient, not only for the passengers, but for the airlines. And number 2, you've probably waited in an airport for aircraft to get to a gate just because they did not have enough gates to get on that aircraft. So with this bill, this will give both those airports the opportunity. With this money, not only is it just a loan and paying back to the housing housing fund, but it will also help them leverage more money from the federal government in order to improve those airports. And as people know, in West River, especially in the Rapid City area, with the B-21 bomber coming in with that area and the number of people that'll be moving into that area, and along with Sioux Falls growing at between 5,000 and 7,000 people a year, just because we are the greatest state in the union to live in, our airports need this money to help facilitate passengers coming and going, get the flights that we need to have here to accommodate people like me and you and anybody else to get a one-way flight to your destination instead of having to probably take 3 or 4 different connections. These are very important pieces or businesses in our state. They generate billions of dollars of revenue, employ a lot of people, and they make life, or we can make life, a lot simpler for our passengers as we move forward. So I recommend a yes vote on Senate Bill 76. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 76. Representative Duffy.
Thank you, thank you, Speaker. SB 76, I think most of you that know, I've been part of the group along with a good representative from Minnehaha talking about this issue for some time. We do support airports. We believe airports are critical infrastructure. If you think about it, between business, tourism, freight delivery, Medicaid, it touches all of us in one way or another. Now, we have good airports. We have 5 really good regional commercial airports. 2 of them are the subject of this bill, Sioux Falls and Rapid City, because they take 96% they haul 96% of the people. So I'll keep it to those 2 for the time being. We know what's happened to the population. We know what's happened to employments. It's grown, not exponentially, but it's grown significantly over the last few years. South Dakota has been discovered, and we're not going back. Anybody who's flown recently knows it is crowded and it's expensive, and it's a function of demand, supply and demand. And the flights that are available with the gates that are available all want to come and go at a certain time in these smaller regional airports. The FAA and local have always paid for this project or these projects, but the FAA doesn't do that anymore alone. They look for projects that have skin in the game, and the state is the third wheel here. So they help those who help themselves. Essentially, your constituents, you can make a decision on this. You know what you've all flown. You know what it is really. You can decide to send the money to Delta or United, or you can decide to have your constituents save a little bit of the money and keep it. You can decide for higher fares, or you can decide for lower fares. You can decide for more options for your flight options, or you could decide for less. It's really up to us if we want to invest in these facilities. I think we should. I would appreciate a green vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks, Representative Ismay.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had a question for the Prime.
State your question.
This is a loan, correct?
Representative Colbeck, do you wish to answer that question?
Representative, good question. Yes, it is. This is a loan. This is based on the same Senate Bill 6 of last year, where we loaned from the Housing Infrastructure Fund $15 million to the Douglas School District. The only difference between this loan to these airports and the loan that was issued under SB 6, this is a 2% loan. The loan to Douglas School District was a 0% loan.
Follow-up or remarks, Representative Ismay?
Just remarks.
Go ahead.
I think they should probably just go get their own loan. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 76, Representative Poirier.
The airport is in my district. We live probably about 2 miles south of the Rapid City Airport. My husband likes to watch all the planes go by. I don't know why, but he's found a community of enthusiastic people who love to watch the plane, and then they get on their app and they look at the radar and they say the nomenclature and everything. But I can tell you that we have a lot of tourists that fly in for a lot of different events. Tourism is our biggest thing here in South Dakota. And especially during the big, huge events like the Sturgis Rally, that place needs an update, guys. It's a little bit embarrassing when our tourists have to come in and park on the dirt because the parking isn't big enough, and they have to go and walk in the dirt and haul the luggage through the dirt parking lot. It really needs an update. So it speaks to how we welcome our visitors. So aside from the numbers and the figures, you have a good, feel-good portion to vote yes on this bill.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 76, Representative Andera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question for the Prime.
State your question.
So this is a loan at 2%. Is there a time frame that they have to pay that back?
Representative Colbeck, do you wish to answer that question?
Yes, I do, and thank you for the question. The loan is set up the same way as the Douglas School loan was set up. They have 20 years to pay this loan back. Thank you.
Follow-up or remarks, Representative Andera.
Follow-up, please.
State your question.
The money that is going to be coming from the state, is that for specific projects, or is it kind of a carte blanche? They can do whatever they want with the money.
Representative Colbeck, do you wish to answer that question?
The money that is given to the airports, the $15 million that they will loan, not given, that they will loan, will be used for projects that are approved by the federal government out of the Aviation Authority. That they have specific projects that they can use this money for to leverage federal money, and when they leverage that with federal money, those dollars have to be spent on specific projects that are approved by the Aviation Department and the federal government.
Follow-up or remarks, Representative Andera.
Another follow-up.
State your question.
How much is the total price tag? Is there an estimate out there for Sioux Falls as well as Rapid City Airport?
Representative Colbeck, do you wish to answer that question?
Yes, I do. Sioux Falls, Rapid City right now, the project is in the vicinity of $110 million. And Sioux Falls, it is in the vicinity, and when I say vicinity, I don't have I can give you pretty much the exact numbers, is $185 million.
Follow-up or remarks, Representative Andera.
One more follow-up.
Stage question.
Okay, so how much of that has already been allocated? Like where are they at now in that, reaching that goal?
Representative Colbeck, do you wish to answer that question?
Yes, I would, Mr. Speaker. In Sioux Falls, a $5 million loan came from the city of Sioux Falls. $30 million came from a federal funding. They used that money to get the federal funding. $500,000 come from the Aeronautics Fund, which is here in South Dakota, we have that. And $1 million came from their own airport funding. The balance of it will be used, with this money, the $15 million will be used to leverage another $10 to $20 million from the federal government, and then the balance will be raised or come out of their authority fund.
Follow-up or remarks, Representative Andera.
Just remarks. I appreciate the good representative having those answers. I think a lot of people across the state of South Dakota kind of wants to know where their money's going and what it's being used for. I do like the fact that this is coming across as a loan, a very low interest loan. I wish I could get a loan like that. But I haven't decided how I'm going to vote yet, but I have a little less trepidation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 76. Representative Jamison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. I just wanted to share a little perspective from the Sioux Falls area and its efforts. We had a former member here who is now serving on the Sioux Falls City Council who has proposed this, a matching fund of $5 million. It's a matching loan. They did it at 0%. And the state's portion here is really an opportunity for the state to participate in both of these airports' growth. I just wanted to kind of summarize it that there's a lot of people who are trying to make this go forward. The Airport Authority already has borrowed money to do this project. They will be raising fees and collecting fees to pay for those loans. The city of Sioux Falls understands completely the value of having a well-developed airport. And I'm sure Rapid City understands this just as well. This portion, the ability for the state to include this opportunity, puts all of us kind of in the same effort. The federal government is a part of this. Now the state could be a part of it. The city of Sioux Falls, for sure, is a part of it. I really would urge your support. The money that this money is coming from in the fund is not being utilized at the moment. That's where this opportunity is, the opportunity to use that money for something great on both sides of our state. Please support the bill.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 76. Representative Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The structural issue presented by Senate Bill 76B is not constitutional authority, but scope expansion of an existing fund beyond its original housing mission, and the creation of subsidized public lending authority for airport infrastructure through an entity designed to finance housing development. That was the original intent. The National Republican Party platform and the South Dakota Republican Party platform both emphasize limited government, fiscal discipline, and avoiding government financing of activities more appropriately handled by private markets or traditional local financing mechanisms. Expanding a housing infrastructure fund to finance airport infrastructure represents a structural expansion of government financial participation in infrastructure markets. Because Senate Bill 76B broadens the statutory mission of the Housing Infrastructure Fund and authorizes subsidized public loans for airport infrastructure while exempting borrowers from normal oversight provisions, the bill expands government financing authority and redistributes funds originally dedicated to housing development. So please vote red. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 76. Any further remarks? Anything in closing, Representative Colbeck? Representative Colbeck in closing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, members of the body. I am not going to go into too much other than I just want you to know that I would appreciate a yes vote on this here. Again, I'm just going to reemphasize this is a loan, and I'm going to reemphasize the fact that this was passed by the body last year for the Douglas School District in the same regards as a loan. So I appreciate your yes vote today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Seeing no further remarks, the question before the House is final passage of Senate Bill 76. Due to the appropriation, Senate Bill 76 does require a 2/3 vote. Representative Wahlberg.
Mr. Speaker, point of order.
State your point.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I could have just a little bit of latitude.
Granted.
Mr. Speaker, this is identical legislation that we had last year with Senate Bill 6 with the Douglas School District that we just got done talking about. Last year, this bill required a simple majority, passed both houses, both chambers. This year, this bill comes, and it was heard originally with the Senate Appropriations, and it was referred to the Commerce. It came over to the House, and it's never been heard in Appropriations, and has since been heard in Commerce and then into State Affairs. Mr. Speaker, I respectfully request that this be a simple majority, holding the same as last year, that this is not an appropriation. It is more like a loan, sir. According to LRC and Appropriations Constitution, this is not an appropriation, sir. This is a transfer of funds, and therefore 2/3 is not required.
Thank you. So the Speaker will explain his rationale for the 2/3 vote requirement as it relates to prior bills that have come before this chamber. The Douglas School was ruled simple majority. The Speaker was erroneous when he ruled that as simple majority last year. This year we had a similar provision granting money out of this fund for a loan. The Speaker did rule that as a 2/3. The rationale for the support of the 2/3 is the definition of appropriation, which can be found in 4-7-1, which says appropriation is an authorization by the legislature to a budget unit to expend from public funds a sum of money not in excess of the sum specified for the purposes specified in the authorization and under the procedure described in the chapter. And so there's really two elements of that. It's the authorization to expend, and it's for a specific purpose. And if you look at the language of Senate Bill 76 in Section 2, there's a change in the purpose for which this money is being expended, from housing infrastructure to airport infrastructure. And so that is, by the Speaker's ruling, an appropriation that then requires a 2/3 vote. That is the Speaker's ruling. Are there any further remarks on the challenge?
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Wahlberg.
I do challenge your ruling.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Gosch.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate your acknowledgement of last year's ruling being inaccurate. And I would, in regards to your conversation and the ruling here, point to the Constitution. The Constitution clearly says that all separate appropriation bills, aside from the general fund, must be put into a single bill, single subject, and be appointed by 2/3. So I feel that by challenging this ruling, your ruling being correct, by overriding this ruling, we are overriding the Constitution of the state of South Dakota and therefore negating our oath and our jobs to uphold our Constitution. So I would urge this body to uphold the Speaker's ruling, maintain decorum with your oath to the Constitution, and let's move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Ladner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my understanding that this bill passed the Senate by a simple majority. And I would like you to consider remaining consistent in that. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Mortensen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Only because of the speaker from Glenn, I'm getting up. But when you are listening to this, there's a point of this that we're missing, which is what it says in the statute that was cited up here is to expend. These dollars are not being expended. They are being loaned out. There's a legally enforceable obligation to repay that loan. It is not being expended. It is being allocated in some way. But whenever there is that legally binding obligation to repay, that is a loan, not an expenditure, and not an appropriation. An appropriation is when you take the money and you spend it, you give it somewhere. This is a loan. Money over here, obligation to repay over here. Anybody who's ever done a balance sheet knows that when you issue a loan, it shows up on both sides of the ledger. You put the monies out, but on your asset side, you have their obligation to repay. That's why this isn't an expenditure and it isn't an appropriation.
Thank you. Representative Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senate Bill 76 passed this year on a simple majority vote. This body also passed Senate Bill 6 a year ago, which was a funding transfer from the Douglas School District last year, which was an identical process to what Senate Bill 76 is doing this year. This is a funding transfer and not an appropriation. Therefore, it does not require a 2/3 majority vote. This is a policy bill. The word appropriation is not even mentioned in this bill. I kindly ask you to stand and override the 2/3 majority. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks? Any further remarks? All right, seeing no further remarks, the roll call has been requested. Roll call requires the support of 1/6 of the members present. Is the member supported? The member is supported. That was just on the roll call. Okay. So the question before the House is, shall the ruling of the Speaker be sustained? All those in favor of sustaining the ruling of the Speaker will vote aye. Those opposed, nay. Everybody clear? The clerk will unlock the voting machine and the members will proceed to vote. Representative Roby.
Could you clarify the vote one more time?
Yeah.
I think there's some confusion.
Okay. The question before the House is, shall the ruling of the Speaker be sustained? Shall the ruling of the Speaker be sustained? In other words, if you think it should be a 2/3 vote, vote green. If you think it should be a simple majority of members elect, vote red. We good? All right. This is a majority of members present.
Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
The clerk will please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were ayes 33, nays 34, excused 3.
And so the ruling of the Speaker is overridden. So the question before the House is final passage of Senate Bill. Representative Gosh.
May I have further remarks?
Well, we closed out remarks and we were on the...
My argument would be that the bill has changed substantially, now being a simple majority.
I'm sorry?
Further remarks. Am I allowed further remarks on
Well,
the bill as is
we're
now?
no longer on debate. Do you have a point of order?
No, Mr. Speaker, I have an amendment I'd like to pitch, is what I'd like to do, now that the vote threshold has changed.
Okay. I'm going to have to rule that out of order because we closed out debate and we are now on the vote. I had started announcing the call of the vote, and so I'm going to have to rule that out of order. Would you like to challenge the ruling of the Speaker? Okay. Okay, seeing no further remarks, the question before the House is final passage of Senate Bill 76. All those in favor will vote yea, those opposed nay. The clerk will unlock the voting machine and the members will proceed to vote.
Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
Clerk will please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there are ayes 43, nays 24, excused 3.
Senate Bill 76 having failed to, oh, excuse me, wow. It's not 2/3, just in case you missed that whole thing we just went through. Senate Bill 76 having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elect is hereby declared passed. Any questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed correct. Representative Derby. Granted.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Want to welcome the Mayor of Rapid City, Jason Solomon, up there to watch all this.
Representative Goodwin.
I'd welcome the sheriff of Pennington County, but we did that already for Representative Derby's notice.
Senate Bill 96, an act to authorize the imposition of a county option gross receipt tax to reduce owner-occupied property taxes.
Senate Bill 96, having had its second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Are there any remarks? Representative Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the body, SB 96 is not a cell phone bill. You're welcome. The property tax crisis facing many South Dakotan homeowners reminds me of the headstone on a grave that says, "I told you I was sick." Over the last 5 years, the assessed valuations of South Dakota homeowners have increased over 60%. The average South Dakota homeowner is paying an increase of 40% more per structure, close to $1,000. Some South Dakota homeowners are paying $4,000 per year more in property taxes during a 5-year period. The solution is SB 96, which is a targeted approach that enables local government to decide whether or not to create an optional county sales tax of up to 0.5% of county sales to reduce property taxes. SB 96 preserves and respects local control, as any sales tax increase is entirely discretionary on the part of the county. If this option is exercised at the local level, a dedicated fund is used to lower owner-occupied property taxes by providing a homeowner tax credit for each homeowner against the consolidated county levy. The average relief by county, if every county enacted this measure, would be property tax savings for homeowners of between 10 and 25%. Now, you may say SB 96 sounds like a tax increase, but it isn't. It's a different source of discretionary revenue to replace dollar for dollar the county levy to bring needed targeted relief to owner-occupied property owners. The counties with the biggest crisis are also the ones with the most growth and the most visitors and the most tourist traffic, all of which can be better captured by a sales tax, which is really a consumption tax, as we all know, versus continuing to pressure owner-occupied property owners or to pursue a statewide tax increase. Now, here's what we know from this session, and actually during the property tax reform task force, of which I and others were a member. Neither we nor our constituents want a statewide sales tax increase, and we saw that reflected in the defeat of HB 1308 this session. We know this too. The property taxes of homeowners need to be reduced without statewide tax increases. And state budget cuts cause a reduction in services. And we don't want to grow government. So SB 96 is also kind on agriculture, which I believe this body also decided. This targeted relief also works well with other bills that we're all aware of that we're working on to also provide statewide property tax relief. So taken together, Both targeted relief and statewide broad-based relief will provide the best solution. So back to the headstone. Funerals are expensive, but SB 96 is not. Now, I'm going to say this carefully, but I mean it, and I think it's the fact. The only reason for a no vote on SB 96 is politics. So let's not do that to our people. Please vote yes.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 96? Representative Derby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of Senate Bill 96, and the part that I really like is Section 13. All monies received and collected on behalf of a particular county by the Department of Revenue pursuant to this chapter must be credited to a special county gross receipts tax fund. Any monies remitted to a county must be deposited in the county's property tax reduction fund. Previous speaker talked about targeted and county option. The part I like is being from Pennington County, where we have 3 to 4 million visitors a year, a majority of them from out of state. I really like the idea of someone from out of state helping to pay my property taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 96? Representative Ladner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I've been at this property tax deal for 4 to 5 years, and my biggest goal was to get the conversation started. It took me a year to get people to even want to talk about it. It's a big issue. People wax over when you talk taxes. The bill we have before us is a good bill. It's a good bill for our counties. If they choose to opt in, they don't have to. They can go to 1/4%, they can go 1/2%. So it gives them the flexibility of the need to offset their budgets, and that offset of their budgets is going to generate about in the neighborhood 20–24% savings on property taxes for the people in my district. So I wholly support this bill, and I hope you will too.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 96? Representative Mortensen.
Yeah, I rise in opposition to this bill today, and it's a new tax. It's a new half-cent tax bill. It would authorize that state over, and when that sunset expires, it would allow counties to take it to to 5%. So it's a new tax. I'm not really opposed to it today because it's a tax bill. I'm opposed to it today because this is a redistribution bill. This is fundamentally a redistribution bill. From whom to whom? From the poorest South Dakotans to the richest South Dakotans, and from the poorest counties to the richest counties. When we hear about these visitors, they don't just come from out of state. They come from our rural communities. And because this bill is structured that the property tax cut goes to where the economic activity goes, you know who's getting the biggest tax cut? The people in the biggest houses in the biggest towns. And we're not doing it through the education levy by providing more money to education and some of these things. This is a straight up tax credit. This is going out and taxing everyone and giving it to some. So let's talk about what we're really talking about here. Who gets this? My brother is a PhD economist. He visited us the other day, and we tried to figure this out. Here's the best estimate I've got right now. I think that half the proceeds that would be accrued from this new tax would go to the 15% largest structures. Now that seems weird, right? Because all the bills we keep getting when we're getting lobbied on this has, oh, here's how much money everybody's going to get. That's average. But as you get bigger, it keeps going up and up and up and where that goes. So let me just put it this way. A $5 million house will get 20 times the tax break of a $250,000 house. Let that sink in. 20 times the amount of money. Whole city blocks. One. How do we get here? It's already been noted. Rising home prices, largely in the Black Hills and the Sioux Falls area, have triggered some pressure on this. I don't deny that. I don't deny that. Why is that? Because the homes there are becoming more valuable. It's a desirable place to live. That's what the market tells us. Nobody's forcing people to buy these houses, but they're willing to pay more because those are desirable places to live. And so what are we changing in this? We are changing county to county, making in these big towns even more desirable to live. We are cutting their property taxes on the backs of the rural South Dakotans and the middle-class South Dakotans. That's what we're doing here. We're creating a big incentive to move to town. If you live in any of these rural communities where you go into the Walmart in town to shop, but you live in a different county, now you are paying the property taxes to cut in that big town. That's what this one is. Now, why wouldn't we just do this on a statewide fairer basis? The answer is that bill would require a 2/3 vote. And so this was, that was considered when they put this bill together. But this is overall, in this building, we don't really do anything. The people out in the communities, they do stuff. Here, we're creating this massive incentive to move to town. And people might say, oh, but in rural areas, you'd kind of get this, and it's not as big as that. But the fact remains, this is an incentive because of the way this thing is structured, that the properties that will be benefited from this are in these high economics areas. That is just the plain facts of the matter. You almost can't come up with a mechanism that is more of a reverse Robin Hood concept. Take from the poor, give to the rich on this thing, and it's county by county. That's what's got my goat on it. Now, some of these other proposals that have come in have taken a portion of what would be raised and put it back into services, like for nursing homes or education or something like that, things that benefit everyone. And I'm open to the notion, I've been open to the notion on a statewide basis and through these school mechanisms that we should do that, as long as we're keeping in mind some of those services, because this tax hits everyone, and it only benefits those that own houses. Of course, the renters are kind of out of this thing, but the structure of this that really frustrates me is that I want a South Dakota with broad shoulders and not a pointy head. We got to keep our small towns vibrant, and in this one, we are literally creating an incentive. Move from the country into the town. Your property taxes will be cheaper there. Why? Because the folks in the rural areas will be paying in. Thank you. Well, and so I've got a lot of friends in bigger towns who live in bigger houses, and yet I'm opposing this. And why? This is probably going to be good for Pierre. Pierre's going to be one of the winner. Hughes County is going to be one of the winner counties in this. But when I signed up for this job, even though 80% of the votes are in Pierre and Fort Pierre, I got to represent Highmore. I've got to represent Phillip. I've got to represent Oneida. And we've already been talking about this. This is one of my great fears, is the continued hollowing out of our state into the biggest towns. And this absolutely expedites it. Now, if I were a representative, as we've heard from in some of the bigger, more prosperous counties, maybe I wouldn't be voting this way. I don't know. But we need to think about it. We've had this property tax thing here for years, and I've tried to offer helpful solutions that I think do this in a fair and equitable way. I've brought things to the table. I haven't been an absolutely no guy on this. We keep saying we need to do something. We've got to do something. Well, in this bill, we're doing something wrong. We're doing it the wrong way. Please vote no.
Thank you. Further remarks? Representative Goodwin.
Well, I don't know if I've stood up here very many times and countered my good friend from Fort Pierre, but I'm going to do it now. There's a lot of good to this bill. If you live out, and it isn't by towns, Representative, it's by counties. So you don't move to town, you move to that county. It has nothing to do with towns. I live in Pennington County. But if you say you live in Custer County and you think, well, I used to go to Walmart and do all my shopping, all my groceries. If you shop online, our Attorney General won that case for the whole United States on Wayfair. It's wherever your address is. So gas prices are going to go soaring, it sounds like. By the way, we do have a war going on. Don't drive to Rapid City. Stay in Custer County and order it on Amazon. You get the tax credit for that. So a small county can fight for that and get a benefit out of this. It encourages people to stay home. Now, probably the Walmart in Rapid City ain't going to be happy that I said that, but I think they'll still be okay. They seem like they're pretty busy. And I just don't like class warfare. I've never liked class warfare. If somebody has a bigger and better house than we do, they're going to spend the profits anyway. Somebody has in the $22 million house, I don't know where one exists, but maybe there are some. Somebody has $1 million house, What do you think he's going to do if he gets a good tax break? He's going to spend it. That helps the economy. That's called return on investment. I never hear that term here very often, but return on investment is what's vibrant in a community. So, and if a poor county absolutely hates this, it's done by county. Just don't have your county commissions voted in. You'll have poll with your county commissioners. Tell them not to do it. You know them very well. They listen to you. So I think this is as fair a bill as we can pass. And I also think we got to leave here with something. Give me a break. We're going to go home and say we didn't do this. This one here, it's ingenious the way it's set up, I think. So with that in mind, just remember, if you want to keep people home, just shop online. The money stays there then. So I guess that's all I have to say about it, but thanks for listening.
Thank you. Further remarks, Representative Halverson.
Well, maybe my good friend from out west answered my question for me, because you guys know I'm a question asker. If you order online, is that tax collected according to where you order from? Or is that a statewide tax? Is that a tax that is collected within the state? Will that money get back to that county where the product was ordered from?
Would you like to address that to the prime sponsor?
I'd love to address that to him. Thank you.
Representative Hughes, do you wish to answer that question?
And the answer, yes, I do, Mr. Speaker. The answer is that the delivery address is where the sales tax is assessed. So if you want to order things delivered to your home, then you're benefiting your county. So Mr. Terwilliger actually answered that question in committee, and he was very specific about that.
Follow-up or remarks, Representative Halverson?
Are you sure?
Yes. Yes.
Hold on, let's go through the speaker.
I'm sorry,
Would you like to answer that question?
Yes, sir, I would like to answer that question. According to Mr. Terwilliger, whose opinions I value highly, it is the address of delivery of the goods.
Follow-up or remarks, Representative Halverson?
So the tax is charged by the company, whoever you order from, according to whatever that tax is at that residence.
Representative Hughes, do you wish to answer that question?
I do. That is correct.
Follow-up or remarks, Representative Halverson? Thank you. Further remarks, Representative Fitzgerald.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of Senate Bill 96. As an elected representative from my district, which I've often said is an honor of a lifetime, I am elected to represent everyone in my district, regardless of what their economic status is. And District 31, Lawrence County, is asking for relief. This bill offers it. I would ask you to please listen to your constituents and vote yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks, Representative Sharda.
Question for the Prime.
State your question.
Does this affect farm equipment purchases?
Representative Hughes, do you wish to answer that question?
Mr. Speaker, I do. The answer is that it does not impact the ag sector on machinery excise tax, which is included in the statewide tax. So it will not apply at the county level to machinery.
Follow-up remarks? Further remarks, Representative Colbeck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I have a little latitude on a comment? I got to clarify a comment, okay?
Okay.
I just want to, I'm on the National Board of Streamlined Sales Tax, which was started when the Wayfair decision by our Attorney General went into effect. And in that compact, we got 28 states, and we have what we call CSPs, and those are people that handle all the money that comes through internet sales through companies that do more than $200,000 worth of business a year in the state, or more than 200 transactions. Each one of those, we call them CSPs, each one of those keep track of the sales tax that is collected on internet sales. If it is sent to a city within a county, then the city tax, which 1% or 2%, is included in the 4.02 cents that we have today. So to clarify this, the 0.5, if the county decided to put that tax on goods that could be taxed, then when that internet sales tax went to that county, they would receive that 0.5%. That's how that is set up, and that's how that is run. So if anybody's got any questions, you can come and talk to me later. But that's how that works, and I'll tell you what, it has made South Dakota really strong. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 96, Representative Jamison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just for the record, avoid shopping online. Shop at your local stores. Just, I love America, okay? So, just on a couple thoughts here. First, I served on the property tax task force over the summer. We spent an enormous amount of time traveling across the state trying to figure out the silver bullet for our property tax issues, and became pretty clear there wasn't one. And it also became clear that we couldn't find our way to cut to a property tax relief program. New revenue is absolutely needed, and it was, we worked hard not to get there or to get here. All of us wanted to avoid it. One of the other better parts about this bill is that it's local. And so, as was mentioned, there are challenges, and what we learned as well, there's challenges, and that they're different in each county across the state. Having the local body being able to enact this tax, if they need it and they feel like it's necessary, they can do it. And if they don't, then they won't. And those elected individuals can represent their community. If the individuals in that community, that county, feel like they should enact this tax, they can do it. They can absolutely make a change. The other part about, coming to a great community like Sioux Falls and spending your money, which we appreciate and would advocate for, what happens with that money in places like that where you travel from a rural area and come to a great community is there are great, powerful things that those cities do with that money. They create event centers, parks, entertainment, roads, all of those great things that young people I know want to come and see, and it provides opportunities all across the board. So it is productive, it is good, it makes for good cities like Sioux Falls. It makes us better, it makes us stronger. It makes us the economic engine of the state. So please, keep coming to Sioux Falls, but also support this bill, because if we don't want to do it in our community, we don't have to. We don't think it's necessary, we don't need to. But any county who does feel like this is a tool that is right for them, it gives them that abilities. Please support this bill.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 96. Representative Mucky.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've gotten up on this floor in the past couple of weeks to bring you some bipartisan legislation on this topic, try to figure out how do we get to this problem in a meaningful way. I have to say will continue to stand on one principle, which is, who do I represent? I represent District 15. The overwhelming majority of our constituents in District 15 are renters. When I think about that, I think about this type of imposition on them, and I think to myself, yes, it is an optional tax for the county to pursue, and I would obviously am favorable to options at a local level and giving that power. At the same time, I do want to add to that conversation that the good representative from Fort Pierce shared earlier. This does affect them in a pretty significant way. We talk about tourism being a factor in sales tax, and it is. It truly is. But the people who are ultimately paying the majority of those sales taxes are those who are living locally as well. When I think about those renters, they're not seeing a particular support from this. So that's why I'm torn on this bill, frankly. I'm open to democratic process and giving a local option. But I do want to state for the record, when we do talk about that as a problem, that was partly why I stood before you a few weeks ago, in the last couple weeks, to present an alternative option. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, I don't know if I'm going to be influencing your vote much today, but I do want you to hear from me. There is a principle here that needs to be attended to. And raising sales tax as an option certainly gives local control, but I do have concerns about its implementation. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 96. Any further remarks? Representative Hughes in closing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A couple of questions were asked. You know, renters, here's the thing. South Dakota punches way above its weight, and we have subsidized the creation of probably thousands of apartments. In Sioux Falls, there's a scarcity of available single-family homes. We've allowed TIFs for rental complexes. We have the discretionary formula, which provides, I believe, up to 6 years of reduced property taxes. And so I hear the argument, but it circles back to us because we have created policies that, while they are terrific at attracting people to move here, we haven't paid, in my humble opinion, enough attention on single-family homes. And that's why the resolution, the concurrent resolution that kind of brought us all here on owner-occupied property tax was about the American dream. I'm all about the American dream. And I also know that unless you are financially free, you are not free. So I think there's a lot that can be done to address the good representative concerns, but we've created this situation we're in. Now, you know, we fund government on a consumption tax. This is not a redistribution tax. Sales tax is a consumption tax. That's what it is. People that earn more spend more. They build larger houses, they pay more taxes, they buy more vehicles, they spend more money, they travel, they use our airports. And so when we have a tax structure that is based upon a consumption tax, this is what we're left with. And our constituents and this body has told us we do not want a statewide tax increase. So what does that leave us with? Well, it circles us back to SB 96. It avoids drastic cuts to schools, road funding, law enforcement, public safety, and other essential local government services. It does not impact the ag sector. It avoids growing government to implement. This can be easily administered by the Department of Revenue. And I will say the Bureau of, the BFM and the Governor's Office and the Department of Revenue and the county people have all worked together to make sure they can implement this, and it will be transparent. Other states have already done this. Texas had this exact system in place beginning back in the 1980s. They have 254 counties that use this mechanism. The state of Georgia implemented this exact concept a year ago. So I can't and won't repeat all the great comments that were made in support of this bill, but I certainly ask your support. Let's do something for our constituents and send this bill to the governor. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further remarks, the question before the House is final passage of Senate Bill 96. All those in favor will vote yea, those opposed nay. The clerk will unlock the voting machine and the members will proceed to vote. Representative Randolph.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Personal privilege.
Granted.
Since we haven't done it for a little while, we've been talking for a bit, I just thought I would introduce the mayor of Rapid City, Jason Solomon.
Representative Elward, Representative Poyer, Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
The clerk will please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there are ayes 48, nays 19, excused 3.
Senate Bill 96, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elect, is hereby declared passed. Any questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed correct.
Senate Bill 204, an act to revise certain criteria for loans from the South Dakota Housing Infrastructure Fund.
Senate Bill 204, having had its second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Are there any remarks? Representative Goodwin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members of the body. We'll try to do this machine gun style so we can get out of here. It's been kind of a long afternoon. Basically, South Dakota suffers from a severe shortage of affordable housing. I think we all know that. The lack of affordable housing is a barrier to our young families striving to achieve the American dream of owning a home. It is an impediment to business seeking to recruit and retain workers. And it's a strain on local governments struggling to provide critical service for housing development without raising taxes and fees. To help alleviate this affordable housing crisis, the South Dakota legislature created the Housing Infrastructure Fund in 2023. This fund, which is administered by the South Dakota Housing Development Authority, provides loans and grants for public infrastructure projects that are necessary for housing development, including the infrastructure like roads, street lights, water, and sewer systems. The loans and grants help defray costs of constructing, and to switch the page there, financing these projects which reduce overall cost of housing. The past 2 years, the Housing Development Authority has distributed more than $132 million in loans and grants for housing infrastructure projects. These funds have helped finance the construction of more than $423 million in housing infrastructure projects and enabled the development of 7,360 single-family lots and 5,754 multifamily units in rural and urban communities throughout the state. This is an excellent return on our investment. Senate Bill 204 increases the amount of South Dakota Housing Development Authority can loan for housing infrastructure projects from 1/3 as it is today to 50% of the total cost. Increasing, sorry about that. The limit on these loans will put more money into the work of the communities and help you alleviate our housing shortage. The availability of affordable housing is vital to the continued growth and prosperity of our state. Currently, we have a severe shortage of affordable housing. We can't solve that problem overnight. We must continue to invest in projects that expand the supply of affordable housing. The Housing Infrastructure Fund is a strategic investment towards that end. I appreciate your green vote.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 204? Any further remarks? Seeing no further remarks, question before the House is final passage of Senate Bill 204. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. The clerk will unlock the voting machine and the members will proceed to vote.
Representative Auk. Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
Clerk will please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there were ayes 42, nays 25, excused 3.
Senate Bill 204, having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elect, is hereby declared passed. Any questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed correct.
Senate Bill 244, an act to address issues facing South Dakota.
Representative Odenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move we defer this bill to Monday.
That Odenbach motion having been made and seconded, are there any remarks? Seeing none, all those in favor of the Odenbach motion will signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries.
Senate Bill 179, an act to permit a court to commit a juvenile adjudicated delinquent for certain weapons offenses to the Department of Corrections.
Senate Bill 179, having had its second reading, is up for consideration and final passage. Are there any remarks? Representative Cole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. SB 179, I have to be honest that when I first read this bill, I was a little bit confused. It's kind of a common state anymore. Confused because I couldn't believe that this wasn't already in statute. One thing to be clear, this is not an anti-Second Amendment bill in any measure. It's also not a bill that creates any new felonies or changes any of those laws. This deals with crimes that have already been on the books and that a juvenile has already been adjudicated for by the courts. In SDCL 268C-7, the current statute states, with the words, "If a child has been adjudicated as a delinquent child, the court shall enter a decree of disposition according to the least restrictive alternative available in keeping with the best interests of the child." Subsection 10 of this statute deals with crimes that previous legislators deemed that any youth found in violation of these listed crimes were a danger to the community. Again, it states the court may only commit a child to the Department of Corrections if the judge finds that no viable alternative exists and the Department of Corrections is the least restrictive alternative and one of the following. Those crimes enumerated in subsection 10 include crimes of violence, sex crimes, felony sexual registration offense, burglary in the second degree, that's burglary of an occupied structure. This bill adds to that list with the inclusion of certain weapons violations. 2214-5, possession of a firearm with an altered serial number. 2214-7, which covers reckless discharge of a firearm or possession of a loaded firearm while intoxicated. 2214-20, discharge of firearm at an occupied structure or a motor vehicle. And 23-744, possession of pistols by minors prohibited. 23-745 has exceptions to the prohibitions. A minor on a parent's or guardian property, minor in presence of a licensed or accredited gun safety instructor, the pistol was being used for farming, ranching, hunting, trapping, target shooting. Not to include occupied structures, of course, or gun safety instruction. 2230A-17, grand theft as it applies to the theft of a firearm. Now, since 2016, the statute's been amended twice with additions to subsection 10, once in 2020 and once in 2023. So what's the catalyst of this bill? Over the course of my many years in law enforcement, we've had juveniles that have been in possession of firearms and engaged in illegal activity. I've run into some of them myself. I would say that these were not daily or weekly, but they did happen. In recent years, there has been a significant rise in the arrests of juveniles in illegal possession of firearms, and that being mostly handguns. This is a troubling problem and probably seen mostly in our two largest counties, those being Minnehaha and Pennington. Not too long ago, we're talking half hour or 45 minutes ago, I asked our good sheriff from Pennington County, since he was in the building, directly if they were seeing more of these violations in his jurisdiction. He indicated that they had multiple in just the past week. We have to recognize that juveniles running around on our streets of our cities, armed with weapons, many of them stolen, does present a real danger to our citizens, a real danger to our law enforcement officers, and I would argue a real danger to those juveniles themselves, should they encounter those officers. As such, these weapon violations should be added to subsection 10. In ending, I want to once again repeat that commitment of a juvenile adjudicated as a delinquent under subsection 10 of 26HC7 to the Department of Corrections, court has to take into consideration that, once again, no viable alternative exists and that the DOC is the least restrictive alternative. Now, another consideration is that such commitment can be looked at as early intervention in a young life that's definitely on the wrong path. If they're running around town with stolen guns, shooting at occupied structures and things of this nature, they're definitely on the wrong path. And if we don't turn that life around before they reach their majority, before they turn 18,
Stevens yields.
The next stop could well be that shiny new prison that we're building a short distance from my home. Respectfully request your green vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 179, Representative Poirier.
I just have a couple comments, Mr. Speaker. If you look at this section if you look right below it, B, it says the Department of Corrections is the least restrictive alternative and one of the following. Well, look at B. The court finds from evidence presented at the hearing or the predispositional report that the child presents a significant risk of physical harm to another person. They can already do this without putting these little caveats into law. We remember when this first passed, and now it almost seems like every year they're adding another one and another one and another one. These are little shortcuts. It should not be an easy shortcut to take away somebody's fundamental right, especially our children and especially their rights. Make them prove at court that that child should be in the Department of Corrections. Please vote no.
Thank you. Further remarks, Representative Hunt.
I rise today to speak not as just a representative from my district, but a defender of the unique fabric of rural South Dakota. We all share the same goals of keeping our community safe, and I commiserate with the representatives from Minnehaha County that want to improve the safety in Sioux Falls. However, I must oppose this bill due to the unintended consequences for rural communities across our state. As the law stands today, as the previous speaker mentioned, prosecutors can do everything in this bill if the prosecution provides evidence that the juvenile is a danger. If this bill passes, we are lowering the burden of proof needed by the prosecution to make the case that the juvenile is a legitimate danger. We are in essence saying they don't need to prove that the juvenile is a danger prior to committing a youth to the DOC. In addition, if this bill passes, we are effectively creating a geographic sentence. In Sioux Falls, a judge might find a viable alternative in local diversion programs or a community reporting center, but in Ziebach County, that is not the case. In our rural counties, these programs often don't exist. When we say no viable alternative exists in a rural county, we aren't making a statement about a child's character. We are making a statement about our state's own failure to provide local resources. By expanding the list of offenses that lead to and lowering the burden of proof needed for a DOC commitment, we are ensuring that rural kids will be sent hundreds of miles away from their families, their schools, and their support systems simply because of where they live. Guys, culture and location is not a committable crime. If we look at the weapons offenses that were mentioned in section 22-14-7, and especially in 23-744, reckless discharge, possession of a pistol, possession of a loaded firearm, in many of our rural homes, a teenager with a rifle in a gun rack or a shotgun in the truck is a sign of a working life, not a criminal one. We risk sweeping up kids who have made a mistake of judgment, not a mistake of malice, and handing them over to the Department of Corrections. Once a kid enters that system, they are 3 times more likely to have faced adult incarceration later. We aren't fixing a problem. We are professionalizing these delinquents. For a rural family, a 200-mile drive to visit a facility in Sioux Falls or Plankington isn't a weekend trip. It's financially and logistically impossible. If a goal is to create a safer community and a stronger community, this bill doesn't cut the mustard. We break the bond between a rural youth and their community. We are not making our communities safer and stronger. I want to end my little speech with a little closing question that a senator had in a committee over on the Senate side. If the child is not a danger to the community, why are we committing them to the Department of Corrections? I ask humbly for a no vote for the rural counties of this state.
Thank you. Further remarks, Representative Van Diepen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 36 years, you've heard me say it before, in law enforcement. We're not talking about a ranch kid driving around in the country with a gun in his gun rack. These are kids that committed crimes. They don't go to the DOC because they're church-going young men or women. These are criminals. When they get to this point, they have a long criminal history. And we just seem to forget that. We're not picking on kids where they live. Everybody where I live has a gun. I drive 5 minutes out of town. We all carry guns. But I'm not a criminal. We are talking about criminals with this statute. Please vote green.
Thank you. Further remarks on Senate Bill 179. Representative Hughes.
Mr. Speaker, I didn't really plan on talking to this. You believe that? I did vote for this in committee. You know, we're kind of off in the weeds here. In order for this legislation to include a firearms offense and result in a child currently adjudicated as a delinquent, the court must find from evidence presented that the child presents a significant risk of physical harm to another person. The child has been previously adjudicated delinquent for separate delinquent acts arising out of separate and distinct criminal episodes 3 or more times within the preceding 12-month period, or the court finds from evidence at the hearing or from the predispositional report that the child is at a high risk for reoffense based on a validated risk assessment, and the child either has had an unsuccessful discharge from probation for a felony offense or is on supervised probation for a felony offense, and the child has been adjudicated for intentional damage to property and the property damage exceeds $5,000, or the child has been adjudicated for a drug distribution offense that is punishable at least as a Class 4 felony. We are not talking about Eddie Haskell here. We are talking about young people that have proven that they are a public safety risk. And before they commit another act of violence, which is how many strikes do we give them? And so I'm going to vote green. I understand the empathy. I understand youthful indiscretion. I get all that. This is not what we're talking about.
Thank you. Further remarks? Any further remarks? Anything in closing, Representative Call? Representative Call in closing.
I just want to make one observation. Eddie Haskell later on became a Los Angeles police officer, was a motor officer for many years after his acting career. Once again, I want to assure that that this is not looking at rounding up ranch kids, farm kids, anything of that nature. And there are exceptions to this law. And judges, this is a permissive thing for the judges. They may. The word may is in there. And so that they will still be weighing all the various options and trying to make the decision that is in the best interest of that child and their future going forward. I have seen kids that after the juvenile justice thing passed and kids were not being held accountable for the actions that they were doing out on the street, and I have seen their lives go right down the drain. And I had to deal with those situations where they literally went right down the drain later on. We'd have to pick up the pieces and talk to the families. And the families were frustrated. This is a move in the right direction. I think we're just addressing a problem, and it's a growing problem. And again, I urge a green vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further remarks, the question before the House is final passage of Senate Bill 179. All those in favor will vote yea. Those opposed, nay. The clerk will unlock the voting machine, and the members will proceed to vote.
Representative Hughes, Representative Jameson. Mr. Speaker, all members have voted.
The clerk will please display the vote.
Mr. Speaker, there are ayes 42, nays 25, excused 3.
Senate Bill 179 having received the affirmative vote of the majority of members elect is hereby declared passed. Any questions on the title? Seeing none, the title is deemed correct. The Constitution requires the Speaker to sign bills in open session. And so the Speaker is signing House Bill 1250, an act to revise the types of community-based providers for purposes of state-funded services. Speaker is signing Senate Bill 240, an act to make an appropriation for county rural access infrastructure and to declare an emergency. Speaker is signing Senate Bill 231, an act to create the Water Infrastructure Development Fund, to provide an appropriation and to provide for the awarding of grants and loans from the fund for certain rural water projects and to declare an emergency. Speaker is signing Senate Bill 180, an act to modify requirements regarding non-domiciled commercial driver's licenses. Speaker is signing Senate Bill 142, an act to amend the requirements for filing certain campaign finance disclosure statements. The Speaker is signing Senate Bill 133, an act to provide additional legislative oversight of rulemaking. Speaker is signing Senate Bill 130, an act to make an appropriation for roadway and related infrastructure improvements required because of construction activity at Ellsworth Air Force Base and to declare an emergency. Speaker signing Senate Bill 98, an act to prevent virtual currency kiosk fraud. Speaker signing Senate Bill 89, an act to create a task force to study the provision of emergency medical services as an essential service and the funding thereof. Speaker signing Senate Bill 45, an act to revise a provision regulating delta-8 tetracannabinol, THCO acetate, and hexahydrocannabinol for persons under the age of 21 and to provide a penalty therefor. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. The Speaker is signing Senate Bill 43, an act to address search and seizure provisions applicable to digital currency. Speaker signing Senate Bill 42, an act to enhance penalties for ingestion, possession with intent to deliver, and delivery of a controlled substance in a state correctional facility. Speaker signing Senate Bill 17, an act to prohibit a candidate or political committee from accepting contributions or loan made by a foreign national, to provide a penalty therefor, and to declare an emergency. Speaker signing House Bill 1017, an act to permit the board of a school district to require that certain students receive instruction in alternative settings. Speaker signing House Bill 1048, an act to make an appropriation for the expansion of broadband infrastructure and to declare an emergency. Speaker signing House Bill 1089, an act to modify the distributions of revenues collected from severance taxation on new permits. Speaker signing House Bill 1102, an act to reschedule the date for filing certain annual reports. Speaker signing House Bill 1180, an act to ensure the validity of non-compete agreements in the context of jointly owned business entities. Speaker signing House Bill 1194, an act to clarify authority for the Cosmetology Commission to credit work experience for educational hours for certain out-of-state licensure applicants and to require the commission to promulgate rules therefore. Speaker signing House Bill 1238, an act to protect financial institutions from taking action to prevent the financial exploitation of consenting senior or vulnerable adults. The Speaker signing House Bill 1244, an act to repeal the Special Donations Fund and to make an appropriation to the Department of Education for the provision of a grant to support the Jobs for America's Graduate South Dakota program. Speaker signing House Bill 1262, an act to make an appropriation for a non-residential school-based therapeutic services facility in Brown County and to declare an emergency. Speaker signing House Bill 1263, an act to eliminate an exclusion from the definition of an agricultural equipment dealer. Speaker signing House Bill 1292. House Bill 1292, an act to limit the ability of a health carrier to recoup, recover, or retroactively deny previously paid claims. And the Speaker signing House Bill 1311, an act to require the reporting of funding given by certain persons and governments to institutions under the control of the Board of Regents and the Board of Technical Education. Let's see. Are there any announcements? Representative Northrup.
Mr. Speaker, Monday, 9 o'clock, and the plan is to appropriate more than $1 billion. And if you'd like to see the appropriators appropriate more than $1 billion, 9 o'clock Monday in JCA. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further announcements? Any further announcements? Seeing none. Representative Baumüller.
Mr. Speaker, I move we adjourn.
All those in favor of adjournment will signify by saying aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Have a great weekend.